let them know about all of the different content that you make?
Yeah, so my name is Owen. I was previously a scout for University of Buffalo. I've now turned to making some content covering the draft here on Mr. Relevant with Draft Professor, as well as on my own channel at Weekly Huddle. I'm also on Twitter at Weekly Huddle, and then I've just now recently been recruited to go and write the interior offensive line column for Cheesehead TV's draft guide this upcoming draft cycle. So you can catch more of my written work over there since I'm now diving into that element of it. So other than that, yeah, I'm going for the rare three-peat for Mrs. Irrelevant this week, Jim. So finding most of the time you're going to find me here.
Okay, so as the picks come in, the different podcasters will discuss the picks. And my overall comments is that the less I have to talk, the smoother this goes. So, Ian, we don't have a Raiders. We didn't have anybody sign up for the Raiders. So, would you like to draft for the Raiders today?
I mean, I would like to, in part, just to help out, but also because it's a really easy pick. It's going to be Fernando Mendoza probably. They need a QB. This QB class is very sparse past Mendoza. Now, Dante Moore, there was a lot of talk with him being a potential top 10 pick if he declared to, and through the cycle, I did go back and forth a couple of times. I'm a really big fan of the QBs who can operate smoothly off script, off platform. And Dante Moore, he's got that easy, velocity generation and angle freedom. And at his best, he definitely resembled CJ Stroud to me. And I was a big fan of Stroud with the natural accuracy, the ability to work off platform, but still deferring to in structure elements that are more kind of projectable. That said, Fernando Mendoza separated himself safely in the CFP playoffs, while Moore kind of, deteriorated a little bit with his risk propensity and things like that. I think Mendoza is a gunslinger. He's fearless, but he's smart too. He's very calculated with the risk that he takes. He's poised and composed in the pocket. He's got the rocket arm. And I do think that he's really good at, identifying opportunities pre-snap and capitalizing. So my comp for most of the cycle has been a young prime Carson Palmer. I think he's got that understated mobility when he can get out in space, but he's mainly going to dice you up from the pocket, and he can do that with the combined mental game and arm talent.
Okay, and then Owen and Drew, you guys can comment on the picks, but don't wait for me to prompt you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that's the surefire first overall pick. It is highly, highly, highly unlikely the Raiders will do anything else. I think Mendoza, some people have been criticizing him, I've seen, but what he's done at Indiana has been amazing this year, and I think the Raiders would be lucky to have him.
Yeah, and I think specifically with the Raiders, I'm not quite sure they're ready for a quarterback team building wise at the moment. Like I'm going back and forth whether or not I think it's the best pick for them when it comes to having the ability to now have the first overall pick, take the quarterback you want in a draft where there's only really one option at that spot. You don't have a ton of good options now that Moore is gone. And looking at the rest of the roster, you can really kind of probably make a compelling argument for them to take a different position, try to start building the roster up, and maybe shoot for 27. But the fact is, I like Mendoza. I think he is worthy of being a player at this pick, similar to how it was with like Cam Ward last year, where he's not the knockout of the park quarterback prospect that I would love to have if I'm sitting there with the first overall pick, but a guy that I do think could be selected there. And you can come back around and figure out a way to finalize the rest of that roster with the rest of your picks in this draft class.
I mean, for the Raiders, what kind of intrigues me about that spot is, yeah, the offensive line is in shambles. They absolutely need to address that. But you've got some really good foundational pieces with Ashton Genty, with Brock Bowers. I mean, those two are going to be Mendoza's best friend while he's there. You just have to build up a lot of the others.
And I'm a firm believer, if you can get a potential franchise QB without having to give up additional assets, like if you're already positioned there and there's a guy for you, I'm a firm believer that you just kind of take that chance, right? And then you build it up around him, because you don't know when you're going to get that opportunity again. If you get a bridge quarterback as a veteran and he gets you to 7 and 10, 8 and 9, then you're not in as good position. So if you have the opportunity, take him there. I think Mendoza has the requisite, mental and physical tools to weather any adversity that he experiences early on in his career while they're building a team around him.
Okay, and the next pick came in, so somebody can feel free to take Arvell Reese to the Jets as more picks come in.
I mean, he's my number one player in the class, so I mean, I'm not gonna fight you on this being the second overall pick. Besides quarterback bias and the emphasis on that, going the next best player available, especially for a team in the Jets where kind of everything was needed across the board. They just need top end talent, and getting one of the few blue chippers in this class I think is going to be really necessary for them. And Reese, the fact that they can play more multiple fronts for the Jets, they have a couple rushers with McDonald and Jermaine Johnson. Now you're adding Reese in here who can be more of your stack backer in earlier downs, have those other guys out there, or replace McDonald as the base end on those earlier downs, and then allowing him to come in as a pass rusher and then move Reese around the formation following that. That allows them to open them up and do a lot more things, especially on the defensive front, and then adding some more beef in the middle, because I know they've had some issues with their linebackers. I think Quincy Williams was benched this year at one point because of some culture thing or anything like that. So I do think there was there's stuff that this is filling multiple holes with one pick.
Yeah, I mean, for the Jets, you really can't go wrong with taking a versatile star defender. With that team, as Owen said, you just need absolutely everything. So with Dante Moore returning to the draft, quarterback's not an option. So go next best player available. I have Sonny Styles a little bit higher, but I think Arvel Reese would be a great pick.
Yeah, and I'll add to, like, all of the top edge players in this class have their question marks. Whether how much stock you put in each one it's a subjective issue from person to person. But Ruben Bain, the short arms, how that projects and how that fits teams' thresholds will be a conversation. I don't think it affects the game all too much, but other teams might have concerns about that. Keldrick Falk, the subpar pass rush production, right? Like, can we project off of those tools? David Bailey being a little bit smaller, pretty compact, good proportional length, but still you're wondering, is he going to be able to size up and run defense in the NFL as well? So with those question marks facing every single guy, you look at Arvel Reese and the just raw upside that he has as far as, athleticism, explosion, stack and shed ability in the run game. He's one of the most violent, powerful linebackers that I've ever watched, right? Obviously, he could very well be an edge convert, but you look at the raw power that he has. I mean, he can, completely erode a tackle's center of gravity going bull rush or long arm. He's got that combined explosion, that lean mass and length that can be overwhelming. I think for the Jets, if you're not in position to take a QB, just take the guy who you can mold and who can become a game record down the line. I think of those guys, you could make the argument Arvel Reese has the highest ceiling.
Now we have a few shocking picks here from me personally, back to back here at 3 and 4 with the wide receivers. Where do you guys have Tate and Tyson stacking up for you guys?
I'm not as high on Carnell Tate as a lot of people are. I have him, I still think he's a great player. He's my wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4. Or I have Tyson lower, but once his medicals at the combine, I think he'll rise. So basically wide receiver 4. I think he's a star. And I actually do like the Cardinals' landing spot. Still a little bit early for my taste, but I don't mind that pick. And then Tyson, I think if he's healthy, he's going to be a star in the league. Talk about someone, great athlete, good route runner, can do stuff after the catch. Hands have been inconsistent pass, but they looked a little bit better this year. So I think he can be the star receiver for Cam Ward going forward, and I love that duo.
Yeah, I'm a little higher on Tate personally, but I can understand, some of the, I do think Jordan Tyson, as long as the medicals check out, it's a 1A, 1B situation for me. I really don't see, if you have Tyson wide receiver 1, I'm not going to argue with you because I can see the appeal for sure. I just think Carnell Tate, you look at a guy who's 6'3", being able to reduce and sink his hips and redirect like he does as a route runner. I mean, and by the way, the jump from 2024 to 2025 in terms of route nuance was insane. I mean, we're looking at a true technician, but then at the catch point, I think he had a catch rate over expected of something in the range of 25%, something in the 20s, which is certifiably insane. This is a guy who turns 50-50 balls into 80-20. Now, you don't want that to be their primary mode, but when he can separate the way he does and stem vertically and generate big plays too, and create space and find space on the vertical plane, it's a rare combination. So I know the George Pickens comp has been thrown out a lot. I can definitely see it. That said, Jordan Tyson, if he can stay healthy, I think he has a ton of utility as a 3-level threat, a complete 3-level threat who can separate. He's twitchy, he's fluid, he's explosive, but then he's got the body control to make plays at the catch, and he's a rack threat in open space too. So I like both guys. I don't think there's a wrong answer, but I think the medicals, if the medicals remain a concern, that's the tiebreaker for me for them.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the middle of the both of you guys because I'm definitely I have Tate as wide receiver 3, like Drew does, but underneath Tyson and Lemon. But I am still pretty high on Tate. I think I love his ability to be deceptive and fluid when it comes to deep route running, especially using that size and being able to open himself, opening DBs up down the field, and create that space despite not being like the absolute burner. He does still have that size there, so he's not going to be a 4-3 kind of guy, but he does still have field stretching ability because of that. So I do think both those guys fit well. I do like the fits for them. The Titans definitely need all the juice they can get, and having a guy like Tyson as my wide receiver one, as long as the medicals check out, which we're going to say for him every time his name gets brought up. So he's a guy that can bring any kind of juice to that offense, which they really were lacking impact players all across the board there. And then Tate complementing what Marvin Harrison does more. I do like Harrison a bit more in the intermediate area than Tate. You know, I do think Tate is strong in that realm, and just being able to be a good complementary pair there for whoever is playing quarterback. If it is still Kyler, or if they move on from him with a free agent, I think you're setting up to succeed after last year, where you can put so much investment into the defense there.
Okay, we'll talk about all the other picks that just happened, but I'm on the clock for the Saints, and a lot of people will view this as a reach. But right now, I'm going with one of my guys, one of the guys I trust to fit really well into the Saints offense, and that is Denzel Boston, wide receiver out of Washington. Just a big X receiver, 6'4", 209 pounds, I think. He's got smooth, long strides. He's a great middle of the field threat, amazing hands that really there's not many drops on his film. He's an elite deep threat, I think, with his contested catchability and speed. He turns 50-50 balls into 80-20. We said that about Cardinal Tate. I think Denzel Boston might even be the better contested catch person. He's an elite blocker. I don't think there's a better blocker in this receiver class. So that nuance thinks he does well. A lot of people question his yards after catch or his athletic ability, but I mean, he's a darn good punt returner for Washington. So he's been able to do that. So I trust that. And I just think he's going to be he's going to translate to the NFL very easily. And for the Saints offense, where you're lacking a big X receiver who can get those contested threats or contested catches, I think Denzel Boston's a perfect fit.
Trusting your board. I like that. I like that. It's bold. It's bold. It would have been a little rich for me, but again, I can see the vision. And I think Denzel Boston, one thing that I love about his catch point ability is I think, you talk about guys controlling positioning, right? I think he's one of the better players as it pertains to influencing defenders to make a misstep at the catch point. There was one play, I can't remember what game it was, but he was tracking a ball on the vertical play, and it was a deep post, I think. And he adjusted his tracking angle really late in the rep to get the defender to widen his pursuit angle, and in doing so created space to go up and make the catch and be proactive. So it's those little nuances that he really gets. I don't think he's the twitchiest at his size, but he's fluid and explosive and fast. I think that's what counts. I'm gonna scroll up. If you can scroll up, I'm gonna go really quick, like rapid fire on these picks, because I talk a lot, so we need to exercise some self-control here. Francis Mauigoa. Interesting pick for sure. I think the Giants have room to potentially kick him inside to guard. I think he can win at tackle if you need him to. I would have considered Sonny Styles, though, if I'm the Giants. I think, looking at the need they have at linebacker, him being a top 5 overall prospect on my board, that would have been an interesting value pick. But hey, you got Jackson Dart. I can't fault you for trying to improve the trenches. And Jermaine Eluemunor is on a short-term deal. I think it's a good long-term pick. Spencer Fano, kind of a similar vibe there. Athletic. He's got active hands. I did like how he improved his upper lower sink this year, and he's a people mover in the run game. I do think the anchor footwork occasionally experiences lapses still, but I do think he improved a little bit there too. So prospect who's trending up, has the traits to be a two-phase asset for you. Then we got David Bailey. No complaints there. Energized rusher, motor monster. His pass rush production this past year was insane. And I know some people will cite, and I do agree with this. I think, in terms of flexibility, he can be a little stiff in the hips sometimes. So he's a little high cut with his frame. That said, I think his first step and his long track explosiveness are lethal enough that he can create angle advantages and get tackles off balance with that alone. And then I think he has enough ankle flexion to run the arc and complete those rushes. But then the lateral agility, the counter quickness, and the proportional length to drive power, I think all of those things are there. So big fan of that pick too. And then obviously Denzel Boston. So a strong streak there. I think we're off to a good start.
I want to talk about the David Bailey pick quick, then I'll let Owen go. But for me, I'm not quite as high on David Bailey. I think, first off, he is a dynamic edge rusher, explosive, great technique. He can win in all 3 phases, and I do love that. But I'm not as sold on his strength at the point of attack. He's shown it's been better in recent weeks, but still not 100% sure on that. And then I have some off the field, a little bit more, or even on the field at some points, question marks. I think he's got a little bit of anger issues. I mean, last year when he was at Stanford against NC State, 59-21, and he just stomped on a player's head, got ejected. This year, after Texas Tech lost to Arizona State, assaulted a photographer, I believe it was. So some of those just kind of stay in the back of your mind and make me have a little bit of questions out of him. But if he does well in his team interviews and keeps showing out well, I think he's going to the Senior Bowl. I could be wrong about that, but if it is, he'll absolutely shine there, and I expect him to go up around this early.
Yeah, I'm glad you went first because I thought I was going to be the lone person here, but that was going to be my topic of conversation is that I'm not the highest on David Bailey. I have him very similarly graded to Cassius Howell out of Texas A&M, just kind of similar players to me where they're both stud pass rushers, especially Bailey when it comes to having the full package. I don't think he has the greatest amount of power or speed to power transition. Just going to come with the lack of frame. He does have, like Ian was saying, good length to size ratio, but I do think that he still is lacking it when it comes to trying to project him to beating these NFL level tackles. You even saw that a little bit in the games against Utah against both those bookends that are going to be, probably both first rounders in my eyes. And I think, especially with the power at the point of attack and ability to anchor, if he wasn't on the backside of a run play specifically and having more space to work and collapse angles, he wasn't really able to be that impact of a run defender for them. And I saw him get frankly, his ass kicked by some tight ends a couple times. So it's like, or not even just a couple times, pretty frequently where I'm like, okay, can you hold the point of attack against tight ends, let alone tackles? So he's going to be a player that we need to project him more of a scheme specific role where they're allowing him to have more space to operate in as a 3-4 outside backer as opposed to a traditional 4-3 even end or even in a multiple front where you're going to have him more towards the line of scrimmage. I do think you need to have a very designed role for him or a very designed scheme that he's going to fit into to maximize what he can do. But I do think that the pass rush talent is there, obviously, and I don't think he gets outside the first round, no doubt. Just for me, going ahead of a guy like Ruben Bain, who's more of a complete package, like there is questions about the length there. But if a team is willing to utilize him, similar to like the Kansas City Chiefs taking the pick is great example of that, like a George Karlaftis or another player that can do reduce angles and have an ability to rush from an interior angle where his length isn't going to show up as much against guards. I do think that players like Bain have a more complete profile defending the run and rushing the passer. Maybe not to the level Bailey has, but still being able to impact the game in that way that I don't think there's as many question marks with him.
We had a couple picks go by. For the first one, the one that caught my mind, or there were two really, and that's Ruben Bain of the Chiefs and Caleb Downs of the Bengals. I'm going to start with the Bengals because I think Caleb Downs would be a home run fit for them. I think the Bengals need someone on defense who can really solidify that group, can lead them, can be the signal caller, and that's exactly what he would do. So, I mean, he's the smartest player in college football. He's a good athlete. He's not anything exceptional athlete. You're not going to get Kyle Hamilton speed, size, not all that, but I think he does really everything well, incredibly versatile, and I think he's exactly what that Cincinnati defense needs. And then Ruben Bain of the Chiefs. I don't care about arm length at a certain extent when Ruben Bain is as dominant as he is against so many teams. I think the Chiefs would, after Mahomes gets back, they get Ruben Bain on defense. I think you're looking at a really good team there. I think you got Karlaftis on the other side. You got a really good pass rushing group, and I think Ruben Bain's going to translate. I don't care to a certain extent about if his arms they're not historical outliers like the Cassius Howell or someone like that. So I still believe in Bain. I think he's a top 10 talent. He's my edge one, and I think that'd be a great spot for him.
Jim, can you scroll up so we can see all of the recent picks? I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So yeah, Bain minus the arm length, he feels like such a Spags edge to me, stout, sawed off, but super burly, great mass. And, I know the dichotomy with him and Bailey. I think Bailey is definitely the more explosive edge, which isn't saying much. I mean, he's one of the most explosive edges in the class. I still think Bain is very explosive. I think Bain's explosion is a little more lumbering. David Bailey is a little more fleet-footed, but Ruben Bain, I mean, for people who were doubting him, and I wasn't doubting him per se, but I was reevaluating my placement of him on my board. But the CFP playoffs, I think, really quieted a lot of those doubters. I mean, how impactful he was on a down in, down out basis as a pass rusher with that finishing flexibility, with that hand power, and then as a run defender. I mean, he is one of the best run defenders in the class when we look at how he can absorb doubles and combo blocks. So big fan of that pick. Caleb Downs to the Bengals. That's one that I've mocked probably about like 17 times already. So I'm giving applause to that one. He's the consummate glue guy is the best way I can put it. any role that you need him to play. In support, he can tackle, he can scrape on blocks, he can manage 2-on-1s in coverage. Just an incredibly sound player who I think one of the safest in the class. Sonny Styles, the Buccaneers. Oh my God, that might be the value deal of the first round, man. I know someone said that he was, I think, the second overall player here. He's a top 5 player for me. Yep. Top 5 for me too. Superb football player, just incredible. Former safety, so he's got that coverage instinct, but he's almost 6'5", over 240. He's explosive. He can stack and shed in the run game. He can quickly process fluctuations and congestion. And then he's got some juice on the attack too. I'm a big fan of what he brings to the table mentally and physically. And again, high floor, high ceiling. Can't go wrong with that combination. There's a few others in there, but I've been talking a lot, so I'll pass it off.
Yeah, I'm curious to see your guys' opinions of Peter Woods going to the Dallas Cowboys would be after they made investments in Quinn Williams, as well as getting Kenny Clark back in the trade for Micah Parsons. I'm thinking maybe this could be a potential 5-tech player where you have all 3 of those guys on the field at one time. It definitely could be an interesting front for them, especially for a team that was putting so much emphasis on getting some more size up front and being able to man up against the run and have guys who can control their gaps as well as taking over the game in those positions. So you go from a team that had an absolute void at D tackle from whiffs on Mozzie Smith and having Osa Diguzua really just holding it down by himself there for a while. Then you have now an abundance of players that you're willing to rotate through and have that interior pass rush. So I do think that is an interesting pick because I feel like Woods would be a player that I love him. He's my 3rd overall player on the board. He did take a step back this year. And I do think there was a lot to do with that schematically across the board with those Clemson defensive linemen because all of them kind of took a step back. And I do think that putting him in a situation where he's now – between him, those other 2, Izaraku off the edge, they have a lot of guys on that D-line to take away attention from Peter Woods, allowing him to get a lot more one-on-one opportunities. And if you're asking him to play in more space as a 5-tech, I think if you're looking for a D-tackle to do that, him and Banks are the 2 best possible players for that in this class. And having that pick as high as they do, I don't think they could have went wrong with that pick there or come back around, taking something else, and then going Banks at 20.
Yeah, I don't know if it's hot, maybe a lukewarm take on Peter Woods. Last year, right? He was listed a little bit lighter, maybe close to 295, 300, maybe 305, and he looked super fluid. They played him as far outside as 5-tech and even 7-tech on occasion as a stand-up rusher, and he was natural. It was pretty insane. I remember there was one rep against Virginia where he was running the arc from 7-tech, which is just something you would not expect a guy with that build to do. I remember Jordan Reed actually confirmed he had beefed up to around 310, maybe even 315 before the season. And I thought he looked noticeably stiffer this year in his hips. I thought as far as redirecting in the midsection, I think the lateral recovery wasn't quite as good. I think the finishing flexion wasn't quite as good either. So my hot take is that he might be better at a playing weight of 295 or 300, and then let him kind of, like you said, play outside at 5-tech a little bit, just move him around the front. I think I think he stands to trim down and stay within that sweet spot, because when he's a little bit more beefed up, that's when the hip flexibility concerns come in for me. And I think that flexibility, when he is in the proper weight class, it's a big part of his game. I mean, you can redirect, you can bend around blocks, you can capitalize on angle advantages in the pass rush phase, and then he's still got that explosive, compact power profile too, where he can sledge blocks back and still make plays inside the tackles. So I like him a lot. I just think there's kind of a caveat when it comes to his projection.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with honestly what both of you said. I love Peter Woods, easily my number 1 defensive tackle. I do think he should slim down, like what Ian was saying. I think that'd really help with his flexibility, play speed, all that. But okay, the Cowboys, I was gonna say I'd prefer them taking a Sonny Styles, but they because he was still on the board, but they addressed that with CJ Allen. Before I talk about that, I want to go up. The Buccaneers picking Sonny Styles. As a Saints fan, I hate that pick. But as like a draft analyst, I think it's absolutely perfect. You've got your Levante David successor right there. He's going to be probably even better than David was. I think he's going to be outstanding. Mekhi Lemon to the Jets. I know Steve's in the chat. He's got to be rejoicing. That's one of his guys. I think the Jets, you just need to build up a roster for a potential quarterback in the future. And Garrett Wilson and Mekhi Lemon at your receivers are an amazing start. Lemon, he's only 5'11", plays a lot bigger than that, explosive, twitchy, great short area quickness. I don't think he's the pure fastest guy in the world, but he can just create separation so easily, and he won't drop a ball. I mean, I love Makai Lemon. He's my wide receiver too. I think going to 16 would be a steal for him. I do have some concerns against some of the big physical corners. I think Leonard Moore from Notre Dame put on some really good tape against Makai Lemon, and he did struggle to separate consistently in that game. So I think he's going to be kind of stuck in the slot. So you'll never really get to see him X. But I do like a lot of what he does, and I think that's a great landing spot.
Yeah, that's one reason I love Makai Lemon. He's a phenomenal player. I'm such a big fan of his game. That's one reason it's Tate and Tyson for me for wide receiver 1, and then Lemon is kind of the wide receiver 2, because 1A, 1B, and then 2, because I feel like Lemon can't really, when it comes to press coverage, right? The length isn't quite there to decouple sometimes, and longer corners can give him a little more trouble as far as, Tyson and Tate, they have the size profile to combat that a little bit more, right? And on top of that, they have the quickness to still to go along with it. So that's the one thing. But I agree with you. I think landing in a spot where there's an established wide receiver 1 is probably the best thing for Makai Lemon, because he's going to feast as that power slot. I think, we talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba, that kind of archetype of receiver. This isn't a comp for me, right? But we talk about the archetype of receiver, and now it's kind of taking over the league, because if you have guys who can play physical from the slot, who can accrue rack, who can separate, and who can win at the catch point, I mean, there's no one better that fits that than Lemon in this class.
Yeah, and we're real quick hit the last picks we've kind of missed here. 14 with Falk with the Ravens, and then another edge rusher with Parker at 17 to the Lions. I think those are both really great picks for where they end up landing. Falk definitely projects as like one of those Raven style players where he's got the length and ability to move and can play in some more space despite being 6'6", 260. He has that ability to operate in more space and compress some angles and rush through blockers. I do think they're a team that can utilize him or weaponize him well, especially if they're bringing back like a Jesse Minter or having one of those former Ravens disciples or similar defensive play callers coming in and utilizing what they already have in place there from their past of using the Mike McDonald defense style of play with more attacking edge rushers that are still kind of more athletic freaks with a ton of length. And then looking at the Lions, they've been consistently looking for a pass rusher opposite Aiden Hutchinson. I do think landing there with Detroit is going to be a great fit for him, because with me, Parker, I'm still high on him. I know there was a lot of people that fell off him after this year. Again, I do think for some reason that Clemson D line across the board all kind of fell off in production based on that scheme and what they went through this season. I mean, the team as a whole fell off, but especially like Parker, Woods, we can chalk that up to him trying to expand his playing weight and see if he can be more comfortable at a heavier weight to help his own stock out. Parker, it just seemed like he wasn't getting as much development as people were projecting. He's still that freaky athlete that can get off while still being at an insane amount of size and having that power to come with it. I do think him being still a bit raw coming out when it comes to pass rush plan to be able to one-on-one and win against tackles or even against guards who he's kicking inside without just beating them off the snap. I do think that is something that he can develop and grow on. But being across from Aiden Hutchinson, you're not going to be drawing a ton of the attention from other defenses. And I do think Detroit can utilize him in his athleticism and ability to deploy him both interior and outside as a rusher. So they have a real multiple front when adding Parker and combining him with Hutchinson or a Levi I should know how to say his name. He was out of Washington. Onwuzurike was the D tackle they have there. Yeah, they have a bunch of multiple front type pieces that can definitely penetrate and win on the pass rush. So I do think adding Parker kind of expands that level of play or a level of versatility to have along that front.
Jim, scroll up a little bit. We're going to do something called rapid fire reactions here with any picks that we haven't talked about yet. Have we? I think I remember Mansour Delane. Yeah, we I don't think we discussed this one. That's an interesting pairing right there. The Dolphins and the Rams. Delane goes 2 spots ahead of Jermod McCoy. Medicals are the main thing for me with McCoy. If the medicals check out, he could easily finish my CB1. But that said, Mansour Delane put on incredible tape this year. He's got the mirror motor in press and in off-man. He's got the fleet-footed, athleticism. He's got the fluidity to reduce and flip his hips and click and close in an instant. And then he's super competitive at the catch point. He's willing to take on crack and replace blocks. There's really not a lot that he can't do, right? I think just, not an S-tier athlete, more like a, A minus B plus athlete, but still very, very good. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player for them. So that would get an A for me. But Jermod McCoy is a phenomenal player too. The comp that came to mind for me early in the cycle with Jermod McCoy, Darius Slay. When you look at the hyperactive athleticism, the closing speed, but then also the fluidity and the coverage mobility. There was one play from the 2024 tape. Obviously, it was a comeback route. And if you're a corner on a comeback route, he was playing side saddle to start with inside leverage. So that's a really tough transition to make. 270 degrees, and he makes it with the snap of a finger. Just insane hip fluidity, reduction ability. All the coverage building blocks are there to be a complete lockdown corner. So big fan of that one too. Keldrick Falk, the only caveat I have with that one is that if you're the Ravens, you wanted pass rush production from the edge position. That wasn't something they got a lot this year, and I don't think he solves that right away. He's got the tools to do it, for sure. I think he's got the power profile, but there might be a little bit more of an acclimation period as far as pass rush production goes. That said, the run defense is as advertised. He's very good at sledging blocks, stacking and shedding, and he can really just obliterate down blocks and completely collapse gaps. So big fan of that element of his game.
There's a couple picks I want to talk about. The first one we didn't really mention, and that is Jeremiah Love to the Vikings. For the Vikings, my number one big need for them is cornerback. But McCoy and Mansour Delano are both still off the board. So if you don't want to take Avion Terrell that high, I'm not going to blame you. And I do think Jeremiah Love is the next option. Aaron Jones isn't getting younger. Jordan Mason isn't anything special. So I think you're hypercharging that offense, giving JJ McCarthy some weapons outside of the receiver room because, you don't know what's going to happen with Jordan Addison. So you just need something on offense if you can't get a receiver because none of them are high. I think going with a Jeremiah Love right there is such a good thing. He's so explosive, so dynamic, great contact balance, can do pass catchers, doesn't have a ton of wear and tear on the tires. I have him graded higher than I graded Genty last offseason. So I'm a really big Jeremiah Love fan, and I think the Vikings would be an excellent landing spot. And then the Vega Ione to the Chargers is another one. Just get Justin Herbert some help. He took 54 sacks in the regular season, 6 in the first playoff game and their wild card loss. That's 60 on the year. 60 is the highest of any quarterback. You need to get him some weapons. I'm a Saints fan. I know Trevor Penning. Trevor Penning is not the future at guard or really anywhere on a team. So I think getting Vega Ione would be such a good pick. Amazing power, ironclad hands. He doesn't let someone go. I just think Vega Ione is a perfect player. I have Pregnon graded a little bit higher, so I probably would have went there, but I'm not going to blame anyone for having Ione.
Kenyon Sadiq is another one we haven't talked about yet. I like that one a lot for the Panthers. I think they tried to invest with Jatavian Sanders. I don't think that's really worked out. He's had flashes, but I think you need someone who can, be a catalyst at a higher level. And I think Kenyon Sadiq, what he proved this year, 8 touchdowns, 560 yards, very good blocker for his size too. I do think he has room to improve his lower body strength and power a little bit more. I think Indiana's block, their defensive line, they're a lot more sound, and they were able to get him off his skates a little bit. But when it comes to blocking in motion with his range, and he's got the natural leverage profile, I like Kenyon Sadiq a lot. I think, any offense, and it's kind of been cool to see this movement. And Max Toscano, who's been on the Draft Professors pods before, big proponent of it. But tight ends matter. And I think this movement that's kind of taken steam this cycle in particular, receiving is very valuable at the tight end position. But I think the key to a tight end becoming an X factor is you got to have a high level impact in the blocking phase, right? Where you can block in line against a defensive end and change the mathematics in the trenches. I think Kenyon Sadiq can do that. I think he's got the compact mass. He's got the explosion to reset the point. And then he's a dynamic rack threat, seam threat, receiving threat as well with route running building blocks. So big fan of that pick for Bryce Young. I think he gives him an outlet. I think he improves that offense in both phases.
Hey, Ian, could you do the Bears pick here at 25?
Yes, I can.
The person who signed up for the Bears isn't there, and I know you cover NFC North, so I'm going to give that one to you.
Yeah. Okay. So we got Caleb. Oh my God, man. Oh, Jim, you stuck me with such a difficult decision here. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I could go with Caleb Banks. I know they need interior defensive line talent, and Caleb Banks is a S tier talent. He's so explosive and athletic, and he's twitched up for his size too. 6'6", over 330. I think this year with the medical situation, being a caveat for him, but he's going to play at the Senior Bowl. I think he's going to remind a lot of people the raw talent that he has, and then he's got the stacking ability. I think he has the knee bend to acquire leverage at his size too. Really big fan of his game. But the Bears lost Ozzy Trapilo to a torn patellar tendon. That's a really rough injury. He was looking like the left tackle of the future, and it sucks that they lost him this late when he was playing so well for a rookie. But you don't have a guarantee that he's going to come back to 100% or near that. So Caleb Lomu being on the board and Caleb Williams, needing that protection, it's a tricky pick. I'm going to go with, oh my gosh. This is tough. I'll go with Caleb. I'll go with Caleb Lomu. He's my OT1. I'm very surprised he's still on the board right now. I think you can get a dynamic defensive tackle maybe later on. It's gonna be tough. If I can get Lee Hunter in round 2, probably not, but that would be the dream.
Hey, Owen, you are up for Buffalo.
Yeah, so we're gonna take Elijah Surratt here. I was hoping he lasted through after we got to the Browns pick. I've just recently gone through and knocked out the top of the wide receiver boards here, and he's my wide receiver 5 after Lemon, Tyson, Tate, and Boston. And especially for me, I think what really drew me to this pick for the Bills is he's a player that has size, but also has the ability to create separation both in the short to intermediate, which they do have speed. Whether or not Brandon Cooks returns is to be seen, but they do still have a 4-4 receiver with Khalil Shakir, who does operate over that middle of the field and can stretch that seam, as well as having players that they do attack the downfield with, but they don't ever have time and or freeing up of players underneath to allow them to get that and be able to push the ball down the field. So having a guy who can separate in that short to intermediate and operate in the realm where Josh Allen can trust a player to have some of the more chemistry throws. That was the big selling point on going and getting Keon Coleman at the 33rd overall pick, is that Josh Allen specifically wanted him because he worked well with those back shoulders, and for him to be able to put it up there and trust that his guy was going to be on the same page with him and do those Stephon Diggs-esque chemistry routes and winning those contested catches, even if it is going to be a situation that doesn't favor the receiver per se. So I do think Surratt fits that role, especially when what they wanted when they were projecting Keon Coleman there, but also does a lot more than what Coleman ever offered when it comes to separating and being able to work before the catch and create room and space for Josh Allen to see that he's open, not just having to trust him to be open with knowing that he can adjust to the ball that he's throwing it to. So a player that complements the skill sets they have in the current wide receiver room, but not giving up size when moving on from a player like Keon Coleman. So that's why I think Surratt fits the best with what they're looking for and what's available left for their offense.
Some interesting picks went off the board here. Let's scroll back a little bit.
Howell,
all right.
Abney.
We haven't touched on Proctor. So real quick on Proctor. I'm curious if they're going to move him inside to guard. I project him inside to guard personally. I think he really struggles with speed rushers. I don't think he quite has the hip flexibility to reduce and retain those angle, what's the word I'm looking for? That angle symmetry. Yeah, I think it's really easy for guys to get a step on him because he's a little slower to unhinge his hips. So I think he's better projecting inside. If you're looking for a Broderick Jones replacement, I probably would have taken Lomu there. But I can see the appeal. I think inside to guard, he's heavy-handed, he's powerful, he's a mauler, and he's pretty explosive in short ranges. So I think that would be a good pick if you're planning on transitioning him inside. Although I know Mason McCormick has kind of taken a step there, so we'll see. But interesting pick, but I do like it. We had Keith Abney to the Browns. I think that was my guy Olsen who did that one. I'm all the way on board with that. He's a phenomenal player. He's got the coverage, mobility in spades, the footwork, the ability to click and close. He's got all of the building blocks from the ground up. Right. I love that everything is footwork first with him, but then he's competitive at the catch point. He's one of the best disruptors in the class, and he can play off man zone. He can play press if you need him to. So really good player. We've got Casey Concepcion for the 49ers. I like that pick a lot. He has a focus drops issue to clean up a little bit, but for a smaller guy, he can beat press with his quickness and kind of targeted physicality. He's got the speed to stretch seams. He's got the explosive rack element too, that the 49ers know how to weaponize. So big fan of that. Ty Simpson, very interesting for the Rams. But I think as far as landing spots go, especially for a prospect with as much uncertainty as him, that's a good one. He can sit behind Matthew Stafford and learn and kind of, tamp down the frenetic nature of his game. I think he's got good, not great raw talent, but I think he did flash very good processing ability at his best in 2025. Obviously, he kind of trailed off down the stretch. He wasn't nearly as consistent operationally, but at his peak, I think he can be a Mark Bulger type of prospect, type of player. He can give you quality QB play. He can help you compete. And I think Sean McVay, if he has time with him, can get him to his peak.
I just want
love
to
Ty
interrupt
Simpson
real briefly and say that was the record time for round 1. We do these every Friday. This is the first time that we got one done in less than an hour. So great job by everybody. Carry on.
Crush that benchmark. But for Ty Simpson,
that's what we're doing.
Ty Simpson, that's my ideal pick for the Rams. I love that landing spot. He's declaring for the draft, which I think is the right move in this class. Most of the times I'd say go back to school because he needs a lot of work. But if you have a chance to be a first-round pick, I think you take it. And the Rams are the ideal spot for him where he doesn't have to play right away. He can sit for 1 or 2 years, learn behind Sean McVay, as Ian was saying. I think it's so perfect, and I'd love that fit. Then Emmanuel Pregnon. I said a little bit earlier, he's my number 1 rated guard. I mean, it's just a fantastic fit with the Patriots. You need to get Drake May some help. Their offensive line has been questionable, especially with Will Campbell down. So I think getting Pregnon on the inside, you're just protecting your franchise quarterback, and I'll always be a proponent for that. I'm never going to argue against it. Then I selected Avion Terrell to the Seahawks. Seahawks need cornerbacks. It was between him and Chris Johnson. I think both of them. I know Hank would be pounding the Chris Johnson. He's a big guy, big fan of him. So I went Avion Terrell. I just really like what Avion Terrell can do in the run game. I think he's good as a pass in pass coverage. I don't think it's the top of the class, but I do think he's pretty sticky. He's good in man coverage. He's got amazing eyes in zone. He's always reading the quarterback. Very smooth mover, great quickness. He's not the biggest player. He's a pretty small frame. And there are times where he can just absolutely miss a tackle. But his downhill trigger, he's firing immediately off the – he wants to lay out someone. And I just love that in a cornerback. I think he'd fit great in a Seahawks defense that's looking to make a big play, that's looking to be disruptful. And I just think Avion Terrell is a perfect player for them.
Yeah, real quick. So we were going over some of the picks, and Thieneman to the Texans was selected. Just the rich getting richer on defense there. I actually just finalized my final watch of Thieneman right before getting onto this podcast, and I'm a big fan of his. I do think he definitely fits exactly what the Texans love to do. A player that is sound with his own coverage responsibilities, understands where he needs to be. Is phenomenal when working off script as well. He understands both where he needs to be at the beginning of the snap, but also when reading the play and diagnosing it from a deeper alignment, and then having the quarterback be on the move, or if they're just running some more disguised routes, and then eventually once the breaks happen, he reacts perfectly. And I think what really fits this Texans defense is the fact that he is one of the best when it comes to stepping down explosively, fitting and making good tackles in space, and being a player that can punish guys coming over the middle, or just making sure that he's doing what he needs to do responsibly, and then making those secure plays in space, which is really what this whole Texans defense is about. Is they just play sound. You're not going to get chunk plays. You're not going to get missed tackles. You're going to be able to fit up, or that defense is able to fit up and stop anybody and make it just an absolute trudge through 12, 13, 14 play drives, and daring you to try to score and be perfect for an entire drive. So Thieneman fits that perfectly. Before I dive into my Pregnon bid, I do want to say that I also absolutely love the Caleb Banks to the Broncos pick, as somebody who is a fan of the Bills and is currently prepping for their game tomorrow for them, and going into what their defensive line has and kind of the advantages the Bills may have with their size comparisons, O-line versus D-line. The Broncos running a front that has positions like more 5-tech position players or 4 eyes, where you have players that are still like sub 300 pounds playing that and doing it well. Their defensive line is phenomenal, but then adding a player in like Caleb Banks who has that ability to play that in that space athletically, but not sacrifice that size or that length is amazing, especially for a team that already has good talent to surround him with. He could be that one piece that really puts him over the edge. So I think another scenario where maybe it's not the absolute dire need they have, but for what they technically have as a weakness, I would say, on their defensive line, even though their defensive line is still good. That definitely bolsters that really well. I do want to ask Drew this though, because I did the interior offensive line coverage for Mr. Irrelevant with former Buffalo Bills offensive lineman Jerry Ostrowski this past cycle, and we went over Pregnon, and I think Jerry was a little bit higher on him than I was. I covered Pregnon in last year's cycle for the interior offensive line before covering again for this year's draft class. I'm definitely higher on him this year than I was last year, but he's still like comfortably in like the third round grades for me. He's like interior offensive lineman 14. So hearing him as interior offensive lineman 1, you're not the only person I've heard say that. So I just like to hear like your elevator pitch, your convinced to try to sell Pregnon to me as why I'm too low on him.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the reasons why you're low on him, but I just see a player who will instantly translate to the league. I think he's insanely powerful, great hands. He's not the most explosive or the best athlete ever, but he's got very functional mobility. He can be a puller. He can get to the next level. In the pass protection, I think he's smooth. I think he's got a really good anchor and has really good strike timing and accuracy. So he puts down the defender's arms and doesn't really let them get to his chest. So I'm just a really big fan of him. I'd love to hear what you have to say about him and why he's a little bit lower for you.
Yeah, I think we see the player the exact same. It's just weighing what we see differently. So I agree 100%. Absolute fire hydrant of a human being, like just absolutely blows guys away. Ask him to come on a polar, he can do that and clear dudes out. I think I wrote in my write up here that his best reps are when he's doing like a 6G pull where he's kicking out the defensive end that gets sucked up and just annihilating grown human beings on the edge there. And I do think he can climb, especially when combo blocking through with his center. It's what I really liked about that Oregon offensive line this year with Ipanu and him at combo blocking up to the second level and eliminating dudes. And again, you're like you said, he's total firm base, able to strike and hold his ground as an interior blocker when going against like bigger nose tackles or guys who are trying to win with power in the interior. He is a player that can definitely neutralize that, and you're not going to get through him. You're going to have to go somewhat around him in limited space as opposed to driving through his chest. For me, I think I just knock him a bit more for those athleticism knocks, and especially when it comes to pass protection, his flexibility there to react to late developing blitzes or to players that can win with more quickness. Him going to the Patriots in this, just being a team that has an Ed Oliver on the interior, or now a TJ Sanders and even a De'Anthony Walker who win with a lot more quickness and finesse moves as opposed to trying to drive through guys' interior blocks and shooting gaps. That kind of excites me a bit when it comes to how we're still going to be able to get after Drake May inside the interior of the pocket. Now, him coming downhill and clearing out holes for Ramondre Stevenson or whoever they bring in to be that power complement back definitely scares me a bit. But I do think that the pass blocking element and the lack of athleticism and higher end twitch and flexibility there is what holds me back on having Pregnon be a guy that I'm super high on.
So, Ian, you're on the clock for the Raiders here, pick 36 after taking Fernando Mendoza in round 1.
All right. Can we see the receiver board real quick? Okay. I'm recalibrating with the board here. Can I see? It's like guard, I think. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm almost ready. Can we see edge? Interesting.
And keep in mind, the order of the players is based upon who people have taken in a mock draft. So never assume that the boards are in any order according to anybody's brain other than the people that do mock drafts at Draft Professor.
Nice. Akeem Mesidor is tempting, but I think I'm going to go with offensive line help because we drafted Mendoza. The offensive line was pretty rough this past year for the Raiders. Now, Caleb Rogers, Charles Grant, two of their young pieces really look good. I think you have legitimate future pieces there, but I think they need a little bit more interior offensive line help. Ideally, you kick JPJ back to center, have Caleb Rogers at one guard spot, and then with the other guard spot, I'm going to take Chase Basantis out of Texas A&M. We were talking about guards a lot. He is actually my guard 2 behind Vega Ione. I'm a big fan of Chase Basantis. I think he's got the functional athleticism you want. I think he's got the center of gravity that you want. I do think he's a little short-armed and he can get caught lurching past the center of gravity at times, but overall, I think you're looking at a guy in the run game is super explosive and he's flexible too, where he can cut tight angles, he can pull, he can get out in space. And then in the passing game, again, that strong center of gravity, the active hands and the upper lower sink, I think those things help him out a lot. So big fan of the player. He's a top 50 guy for me, and I think for Fernando Mendoza, allows him to step up, play comfortable, and helps the offense in multiple ways.
Okay, so
Yeah, we
there's
just
been
got
a lot
done.
of picks, but I'm going to kick this one to Drew. So, Drew, the Titans took your guy at 35, and then I think from Terrell on down, probably want to do a rapid fire.
Yeah, I'll talk about Zion Young. I'll try not to talk about him too long because he's one of my favorite players in this entire draft. But I was already preparing what I'd say for the Saints to draft him. I think Ian said at the start, in this draft class for the edge rushers, there's a lot of question marks about everyone. Whether they don't have great size, they're not great against the run, they have questionable pass rush production. Well, I think Zion Young is a lot more of that prospect who doesn't have as many. He's got prototypical size at 6'5". I think he's 65 pounds or something like that. I've lost my notes. 262 pounds. He's powerful, hits like a truck. He's so disruptive in the run game. I mean, at his very base, he's going to be an amazing run defender. But then I see he's got a full toolbox of pass rush moves, can bend the edge well, convert speed to power. I think he's got excellent hand usage. And I mean, a lot of people have him lower, but man, I just see it with Zion Young. He's my edge too. I think he's a first round talent, and I think the Titans have a home run with him there. If you can't get Ruben Bain in the first round, which they didn't, that's a fantastic option.
Yeah, and you said you wanted to go rapid fire here, Jim.
Yeah, please.
So I know Cade McDonald was somebody that people really are discussing as a first round kind of lock player. I think he's a top 10 player for a few boards I've seen online, but a player that I think has an immediate role and impact for this Jets organization. And they already grabbed Arvell Reese, so they're beefing up on the interior there. Whether Arvell Reese is playing as a linebacker or down on the line of scrimmage, you're definitely adding to your run defense there, especially with McDonald and just keeping those Ohio State guys together. With the Cardinals, corner is a position I'm curious they attack with this year because they do have. And they made investments last year, and that's one of the areas of the team I felt that it did fall off towards the end of that season. But starting out early, especially with those younger players with Will Johnson and some of the other guys they already had in the secondary previous to that, I do feel like corner is an area where I haven't really covered it as much in my process so far. I haven't hit those, so anyone wants to think this is just a player that overcomes the need discrepancy there. But I personally think that may have been a shot towards a position that I don't think was super needy. I'm not sure who the player is himself, though. So if either Drew or Ian want to jump in with this corner.
Well, the Cardinals drafted a receiver round 1, right? I believe.
Yes.
It's Cardinal Tate. Yeah, I would probably go with a right tackle here if you can. I don't know who's there at right tackle. Max Ihanator would be a great pick, in my opinion, at this range. I think for the Cardinals, the offensive line, either right tackle or guard. I know both their guard spots are a little iffy. I probably would have gone with that over corner. That said, Chris Johnson is a phenomenal player. And I think if you do have concerns about your talent and whether they're long-term solutions right now, I think Chris Johnson quells those concerns immediately. Because I have a top 32 grade on him too. I know we have a lot of fans of him in the Draft Professors chat. Consider me one of them too. He's a great player. His reactive quickness, working with cushion, clicking and closing is phenomenal. And then for a guy who's listed at 185, we'll see what he weighs into the Senior Bowl, but I think he sizes up really well in run support too. So big fan of the player.
And then you have anything on Colton Hood? And we already talked about, speaking of, to just touch on Chase Basantis real quick, when Ian drafted him, we were talking about interior offensive lineman. That is my interior offensive lineman 1, just slightly ahead of Vega. I think he's a bit more polished and ahead of the curve when it comes to that player. So I do think he's a great pick up here for the Raiders, especially when trying to protect Surratt. Colton Hood, corner from Tennessee, going to the Giants. I think the Giants just need to add overall in this defense. Again, still corner's still my weak point. So if either of you guys want to jump in and cover Colton Hood real quick, we can move on after that.
Yeah, Colton Hood is talented. He's young. Again, the reactive quickness is something that I prioritize a lot with corner because things are moving so fast. You just got to be able to have that muscle memory, and I think his reactive quickness out of his stance is some of the best in the class. He's explosive. He's fast. He's twitched up. He's really fluid too. I think discipline sometimes, as far as using targeted physicality in catch point situations, can improve. But aside from that, he's got all the athletic tools that you want. He's competitive in both phases, and he's a playmaker too. So big fan of the player. I think coverage mobility, right? If you have that, if it underlies your game at such a high level, it's a big boost to you and a big boon for your development moving forward. I think that's probably his greatest strength.
Gotcha. And then I'm curious to hear your guys' opinion on this with Chris Bell going to the Texans, having just they invested a second round pick in Jaden Higgins last year. They also invested draft capital in his Iowa State teammate I'm blanking on the name of the slot guy they drafted last year from Iowa State as well. Jalen Noel, yeah. So they grabbed 2 rookie receivers last year. They already have Nico Collins and hopefully a healthy Tank Dell next year. Kind of adding to a strength there. We took a safety in the first round. I'm curious to see Texans fans' opinions on this, especially with not targeting any offensive line position so far. Like you have Isaiah World on the board. If you want to upgrade probably over Trent Brown, similar style of player with size and length there on the outside. Again, probably not as put together and complete as a veteran like Brown is, but if you're looking for a player to match what you already have on the outside there, I think World to the Texans there probably would have been best in my opinion.
I think we still got Monroe Freeling out there too, who would be a good pick. Also, running back. If they wanted Emmett Johnson at this juncture, I think the Texans are one team that might need a long-term infusion of running back talent, someone who can truly create at a high level. I'm really high on Emmett Johnson, so other people might not be quite as high, but I would circle him with the second round pick too. But obviously, offensive line takes precedence. You need guys to clear lanes in the first place, so Monroe Freeling would be an option for me. I know there's a lot of tackle to guard converts too, if you want to upgrade the interior line too.
Yeah.
About the Emmett Johnson, you're not alone. I'll just say that quick. I love Emmett Johnson.
Let's go. He's so fun.
He's so dynamic. And here, Jim, can you scroll up 1 second? I'll talk about, there's one thing I want to say, I forgot. And that's Chris Brazzell. I want to go over him. I would love to hear, Ian, Owen, your thoughts on him, because I'm not a fan. I think he's my wide receiver 16. So I am completely out on Brazzell. I know Chris is the one who drafts him. We've talked with him. He's a big fan of him. He's got great size, great speed, but I have some serious effort concerns about him. If he's not an option on a play, or even if he's not the primary target, there's plays where on run blocking he skimps out. I don't think he runs routes fully when he's not the primary option. And I just have I don't think he's the best route runner. I don't necessarily think it's a Tennessee system. I'm not out on that. That's fine. I don't grade him too harshly for that, but I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on him.
I really like the unteachables of his game. I think he's a phenomenal athlete with his size, 6'5". I think he's really fluid for that size too as a route runner. I think particularly on the vertical plane, that's where they use him the most, right? But I think he does have the ability to stem and offset DBs in space and then sustain acceleration through transitions, right? So I think the fluidity for his size is really appealing. And then the catch point skills. I think again, I like to, you see things on film, you want to corroborate them with analytics. I think he has a catch rate over expectation this past year of like over 16%. So again, he's a guy who, if it's a high difficulty situation, he has the body control and the catch point composure and the focus and the hand-eye coordination to capitalize on that. Now, I do think all of your concerns are valid. I do think as far as the short range separation, release package, he's got room to keep refining that. And I also think, when he's not the preferred target, his blocking can fall by the wayside. And if you're drafting a receiver, you want them to be a good utility player. If you're an NFL schemer, offensive coordinator, you need all of your pieces to be able to disguise looks on any given play, right? So if he's not gonna, if he's not gonna insert in the C gap, right? If he's working the slot, that's going to hurt you if you're trying to work off of that look again, right? So I think as far as disguising and being able to fulfill any role and have that utility goes, I do get the concerns with Brazel. But I do think if you're looking for a deep threat, if you can get past that or coach that up, I think that is, you know, a role that he can fill. It's kind of a niche role though. So I think for teams that have that specific need for a deep threat, a guy who can generate chunk plays, I like him a lot. But I do agree with you. There are some concerns. He's probably more of a top 75 guy for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not nearly as high on where he went there, but I do see some value with his skill set. I mean, there's always going to be value for height, weight, speed type players, so I don't think that being lower on him is particularly bad, especially if he's not offering a lot more, especially coming out of that Tennessee scheme where it's hard to evaluate what these guys can truly do outside of that. As kind of a crapshoot on whether or not they're going to develop outside of that scheme specifically, especially when guys have just that skill set, which they are constantly being utilized just in that way, in that scheme. So I do think you have some legitimate concerns. I do think more if he was on a different team than Tennessee, he may be able to show off a bit more than that. Just to scroll back up, Michael Trigg to the Chiefs, assuming the Travis Kelce replacement, even if it's not this upcoming season, moving forward, I do think that is a great move for them there. They already have another tight end that's a bit more on the blocking side with Noah Gray, where they can offer to go for more of the big athlete there to be another pass catcher to that offense. I know there's been a whole conversation about if they have a number one receiver between Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy and some of the pieces they already have there. You can see a lot of teams kind of transitioning more to this big personnel where they're going 2-3 tight end sets like the Rams and the Bills are, who are currently still at the final 8. So I do think that maybe the Chiefs could be one of those teams that is the next in line to, even if Kelce stays in the league, you have Kelce, Trigg, and Gray. You can start going that 3 tight end sets, big personnel who can still go out there and catch the ball. And you can utilize Kelce as more so like a supersized receiver and allows other 2 guys to be more in line. So I do think that is a good pick for them, especially for what they need and where the trend in the offenses are going right now in the NFL. So as a Bills fan who has been bounced by the Chiefs the past however many years in a row, it's not something I love to see right there.
Steve Lee Hunter to the Colts, the Grover Stewart replacement. Let's go. Oh my God. I love that. I would flip this table out of excitement if I was not a podcast right now. So I love that. That's great. Jim, let's get another rapid fire reactions wave going here. Let's scroll back up a little bit. Okay. I'm going to limit myself to 10 words per player. We're going to try that. We'll see. Michael Trigg.
If you get 41 through 47.
Okay, with 10 words per player, I'll try.
No requirement on 10 words or less.
I have to impose the limit, or else I'm going to go over it. I have to. This has to happen. Jennings Dunker, likely IOL convert, but powerful. Mauler, great mullet. I like that. Keontae Scott, baller. He's got the tenacity, explosive range, versatility, supportability, playmaking, big fan in the nickel. Kamari Ramsey, another glue guy. He can play nickel, he can play safety, needs to improve playmaking, but great coverage mobility, and I think that underpins his game. Trinidad Chambliss, eligibility is going to be the issue of discussion. I'm going to go over 10 words because his situation is a little more elaborate. But I know his lawyers, his legal team filed an injunction after the NCAA denied his eligibility waiver for an extra year. So they're still working to get that 6th year. If they get it, he returns to school. If not, he's forced to enter the NFL draft. I have a late day 2 on him right now. I do like him a lot. I think in this class with the QB scarcity, he could absolutely rise, kind of similar to the way Tyler Shuck did. And I will concede. I had Tyler Shuck as kind of a late day 2, and he exceeded my expectations. I think he could very well be the long-term guy for the Saints. So I think once you get into that day 2 range, I think gambling on a guy like Trinidad Chambliss is a really good decision, especially for the Jets. His arm is a little bit limited. In my opinion, I don't think he generates high ends of velocity. I don't think he's got great drive down the field, but I do think he's a fast mover, a fast thinker. I think he can read pre-snap and identify coverage voids and capitalize. I think he's shown that he can manipulate defenders out of zones and capitalize with quick throws. He's accurate too. He's very composed, and he's got that clutch gene where he just delivers. And he's pretty good at avoiding risks too, unnecessary risks. So big fan of his measure, his intelligence, his maturity, maturity, but then also a playmaker with athleticism and spatial IQ and awareness. So I'm a big fan in spite of the arm limitations. And I'm going to be revisiting his grade again. But right now, it's like a mid to late day 2. But I'm still a fan of the player. I think it's a great pick for that situation. Lee Hunter, enough said. Motor monster. He's got the juice as a pass rushing nose tackle, but also he can stack and shed. He can wreak havoc in interior gaps. Big fan of his film. He's actually got a top 32 grade from me, too. Brandon Cisse to the Ravens. Very, very talented player. I do think he can improve his hand usage in both phases of the game. I think as a playmaker, I think, as a support defender too, he's got the urgency. Sometimes he can improve his engagement technique, but he's got the natural hip sync that you want, the burst, the lateral range, and he's a twitched up, energetic mover with good attack explosion too. So all of the raw tools and the mental temperament is there, just needs a little bit more refinement. But I'm a big fan of the reactive quickness with him too. LT Overton is an interesting one for the Buccaneers. I would have maybe gone with a player who had a little bit higher edge, a little bit higher pass rushing floor edge. Malachi Lawrence, I'm a big fan of from UCF. Maybe would have targeted him there, or Akeem Mesidor. But that said, I think LT Overton has a great natural leverage to proportional length profile. He's explosive. I think for a guy as thickly built as he is, he rolls his hips pretty well through contact. So another guy who could develop into a quality 3-down player. And then at the base level, you can rotate him to 4-eye, 3-tech on occasion. I think he's got some alignment versatility too. So a lot of good players there. And I remember like 10 minutes ago, there was someone asking who the Bills took in round 1. I believe it was Elijah Surratt, Indiana wide receiver.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I was a fan of that pick too.
I'm going to do us proud, Randall. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I'm going to discuss Keontae Scott to the Saints quick because I love that's one of my favorite fits of the draft. Alontae Taylor's the Saints slot currently, Saints nickel. He's been really good, disruptful in the run game, disruptful in the pass game, but he's a free agent this year, and I would be surprised if the Saints brought him back. I think another team's going to pay him a lot of money, so I think the Saints are going to move on, and I think Keontae Scott is that player they would. He kind of fills that similar role where he is a dog in the run game. I mean, he's got 13 tackles for loss. When do you ever see that with a defensive back? But he does that, and then in the pass game, he's still, I think the perfect word to describe him, Ian said it, but tenacious. He is got such great mentality. He's always on the ball. It's hard to find a play where he is not near the ball. He's just got a knack for it, and I think that's exactly what you want in a Brandon Staley defense that's playing really well to end the season. So I think Keontae Scott's a perfect pick for the Saints.
All right, so I do want to talk about the pick with the Jets with Chambliss a bit, because I think that's going to be the most interesting selection we have right here, just because quarterbacks are always going to be there, especially in this this drought of it. I haven't gone back and watched Chambliss as a player for a full breakdown, especially because there's a whole situation with him and his eligibility. I do think for the Jets, whoever you're drafting as a quarterback there in the second round, especially after Dante Moore left, is going to be a player that you're going to have to try to bring along a lot more slowly. I don't think you can really draft a guy at 44 and anticipate him being a starter, at least for over half the season. You do have to go with the bridge starter method, I do think, following this season, and then maybe whoever you take at 44 comes in when the season ends up getting away from you again, or if you're just struggling to get anything going on in the offense. For me, I think a take I'm starting to cook up now with this quarterback class, and especially because I'm going through that position right now, I still am a believer in a Drew Aller from Penn State, just because a lot of what I saw this year on film, especially even in the games that they lost, like the UCLA loss and the Oregon loss, a lot of that I don't think I would consider a ton on him, especially the UCLA game, between the skill position turnovers, the play calling, and a lot of what the Penn State let him down more so than I think he let them down, which I do think the moving on from James Franklin kind of reinforces that. So I know the injury isn't there, and if you're looking for a player to go take and then have as a year in brew, to brew and get ready for the following season, I do think he's a player that I'm going to be a bit higher on in the consensus, especially for teams like the Jets, even like the Rams. I wouldn't say at a first round because it's a bit rich, but a team that can allow him to sit because they have a situation or are planning on taking the situation in a way that they can let whatever rookie they draft, whether because of injury or because they have the time to let him marinate, sit, and then learn and bank more on traits than anything else.
Did I miss a prompt on QBs? We're talking about QBs.
I was going back and covering the Trinidad Chambliss pick.
Got you.
I love that Aller kind of call out because he is being forgotten right now. Like I think majority of people haven't heard Aller's name in months, ever since he tore his ACL. So I think that's a great call out by Owen, and I really like a lot what you're saying. If you give him to the Rams, let him sit for a year or two, you could develop into something. He's got all the traits. It's just Penn State kind of let him down. So his receivers weren't great last year. I mean, he didn't have a ton of options. So I definitely do think that's an interesting conversation that will be had later in the draft cycle.
I will say with Aller, his mechanics do need a lot of work. I think he would benefit from. Well, obviously, he's going to sit at the start of his career wherever he goes. But I think if he can work on that, there were flashes of obviously the arm talent is there, and I do think there were flashes of good processing, pre-snap and identification, route anticipation at times. But the mechanics need a lot of work because a lot of the issues that I saw on tape when he was having issues like a lot of it was rhythmic. I felt like being out of sync with progressions because the mechanics were very inconsistent. The drop back mechanics, a lot of scissor feet, not a lot of sync with getting to your depth and getting to the hitch on time. So he needs to clean that up for sure. But the raw talent is there. Another guy, Jack Strand, Minnesota State Moorhead. I don't know if you guys have gotten to him yet, but he was the Harlan Hill finalist. He's at the American Bowl this coming week, but he's a very talented player. In a class as open as this, I would not be surprised if he rises up boards a little bit because he's got the raw talent for sure. Very surprising in that aspect and very productive too. So in this class, it's wide open. A lot of wild cards to keep an eye on.
Yeah, just to go through the picks that have come off as we were talking about that. So we had Halsey at safety for the Vikings. I do think adding to that defensive backfield is going to be a great pick for them, especially for a guy in Halsey that's going to be able to be moved around and be a movable piece and fit into wherever they do need him to be on that back end, especially bringing that size and athletic profile. So I do think a player like him can be brought in, especially if they do keep Brian Flores. I do think that would be a great landing spot for him. But if he does move on, I do still think that is a player when it comes to adding him to that defensive back end. Harrison Smith going to be over the hill at this point. I'm not sure. I know Thielen announced his retirement. I think Harrison Smith also announced he was retiring after the season, if I remember correctly. If not, I might just be thinking that he just is so old he might as well. But I do think that is a good investment there to replace that and have a developing player there, especially just because they needed safety help regardless. Then we have a couple tackles coming off the board with Ahinogur and Freeling. I do think the Panthers adding a tackle is going to be a very strong move for them, especially with having Bryce Young, being as teeter-totter as he is with his high level of play. You added a tight end in the first round, and you have a bunch of other weapons with T-Mac. You have your running game going well. I think you continue to bolster that and rely more on those run game concepts that have been good, despite which back is back there. I know they had really good games from Rico Dowdle. They also had, I'm forgetting who the other back they had there that went off for a few games this season was, but they've had a good consistent run game all through the season, and adding a tackle that can really move people and have a ton of athleticism in Ahinogur is really good. And then Freeling going to the Packers, I do think they are a team that just is able to grab tackles and offensive line depth and be able to move players around and find the best fit for them. So being able to grab a guy like Freeling, who is a high upside player coming from Georgia, I do think could be a player that ends up being a solution for them at one spot and allowing them to free up other players to move around and fix other spots, which is where they really are successful with when operating as a team with their investments in offensive line there. Connor Liu, he's my top center prospect in this class. I'm a big fan just because I didn't think he was going to come out. He had the injury. I do think he had great film from this season specifically, just being able to be that kind of move blocking type player, similar in the mold to other kind of undersized players in the past, but were able to punch above their weight class in the same realm as, and not to the extreme extent, but like a Tyler Linderbaum, maybe not as much power profile to that, but being able to leverage, utilize his pad length, utilize his foot speed and keeping active feet to run through blocks as opposed to hitting them and staying static. Being able to use that movement ability to then convert some of that size to speed to power as a blocker, it does really help a lot. So I do think I'm a big fan of Connor Liu, and I do think adding him as a player that can play probably specifically at center for the Lions, and then you're looking to find some other pieces to surround him with, I do think will be a great pick there for them specifically.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. First off, Mark, yeah, we'll call it even for that. You take Zion Young, I take Keontae Scott. That's a fair trade. But talking about Max Ayanekor is one of my favorite prospects in the draft. I think his story is so cool, and I think he's got so much room to improve. I mean, he didn't start playing football until junior college. I believe he grew up in Nigeria, soccer background. So he's only been playing football for, I believe, 4 years, and his technique is surprisingly good for not having played that long. I think there's a lot of traits. He's got really good movement skills. A soccer background, as I mentioned earlier, is very evident. Great footwork. I think he's got a good anchor, very powerful, good frame, really long arms. I don't have the exact measurable, but they're really long, and I think he's a complete prospect too. He'll be drafted in the second round in all likelihood. I think he could be a first, but he's going to be someone that fans look back in 5 years and say, wow, that was an amazing value pick. And we have our franchise cornerstone then. Then a couple more I want to talk about. Eli Stowers to the Eagles. I think that's a very interesting one. Stowers, just a pure receiving threat. I mean, he's an amazing receiver, great speed, can create separation, good hands. But at the Eagles, so I mean, I think that'd be a sign that they're letting Dallas Goedert go. He's a free agent. So I just think that's a very interesting conversation to have. And I think the Goddard or the not the Goddard, the Stowers one is going to be something that everyone is going to have a different opinion on. It's going to be a lot of people who are really high on him because they see an insane amount of receiving production. I mean, Pavia's number one guy, and on the other hand, there's going to be a lot of people who say he can't block that well. So it's going to be very contentious and interesting to see him go here because I'd like to see where we had him 2 weeks ago. Might have to pull up and see that, but I don't think it was this high. So it's just going to be a wide array of possibilities for him.
So we'll pause here. So Ian, you are on the clock for the Bears at pick 57.
All right. So I picked
After taking Caleb Lomu in round one.
Lomu. Okay. All right. I'm gonna check 3 positions here. Number 1, defensive line. What we got there? I know Kristen Miller just went off the board. So defensive line, DL.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the value here is not what I'm looking for. Let's check edge.
Pretty big talent drop off at interior defensive line
Yeah.
in this draft class, I think.
And there's some guys that I like on day 3 as nose tackle candidates. Nick Barrett is one that I like a lot as kind of a pure nose. I kind of liken him to Derek Nottie. I think he can be that tree stump in the middle, but you start to lose the pass rush juice pretty quickly in the nose tackle candidates. And then a lot of them are, short armed, maybe not quite enough mass. So it's tricky. Malachi Lawrence. I see Maxwell Llewellyn. I saw the comment about that as a finesse rusher. I like that a lot. I'm a big fan of Malachi Lawrence though from UCF. He's a top 50 player for me. Not going to take him yet. Let's check safety real quick just to see if there's any really good value deals at safety still on the board. Oh man, that's tough, man. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, great player. But I think, the Bears, they got really good play out of their safeties this year with Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker. I think they could ultimately extend Byard another year if they wanted to and look at safety next year. I'm going to go with Malachi Lawrence, the top 50 talent at edge on my board. 6'4", around 260. He's got really long arms for his frame too, and he's got finesse. He's got good explosion. I think he's got a great power profile, and he can string together moves. I mean, he's one of those guys who can run the arc. He can go through you with power if you need him to, and he's pretty sound in run defense too. So one of the more complete players that I watched, and I see varying valuations on him, but he's a top 50 guy for me, and I think a player who's going to make an instant impact at the next level.
I think that's an amazing pick for the Bears. As someone who knows Dennis Allen extremely well, that is one of his guys. I've heard a lot of people podcast with Hank a lot. Hank's really high on him. And there's just going to be a big fan club around Malachi Lawrence. I see it. I think he's impactful in both aspects of the game, kind of what I was saying with Zion Young. So I really like that pick. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, I mean, this is extremely great value for the 49ers. If he's
I bet the 49ers, real quick, I bet the 49ers, whoever was doing it, I bet they were scared when I mentioned him for the Bears. But you got him. You're good. But I agree. Really good value.
I think that's a perfect pick. And then the Texans, Caleb Tiernan is one. Once again, a lot of people are going to have different things because he's kind of an awkward build. He's 6'7", but he's got short arms and He's a pretty spread out body, so it's kind of weird where you're going to put him. His arms are questionable, so you don't know if he's going to be a tackle, but you really can't move him into guard. So it's one concern a lot of people have. Me, I'm a pretty big fan of him. I do really like Tiernan. I think he's got really good movement skills. I think he's got strong hands, is great in pass protection while being able to get out on the edge of the run. So I do really like Tiernan. I think that's a great spot for him on the Texans, who desperately need one. I like Ariante Ursare, but they do need some reinforcements there.
Okay. Oh, and you're up at pick 60 for Buffalo.
Okay, so I do have a couple different places I can go with this. I do think, I personally think for the Bills with their safety concerns, Cole Bishop has taken the next step as a player there. I'm not too concerned about investing an earlier round pick into those positions. That's kind of the calling card for this regime, especially with McDermott and his history of developing safeties. Players, especially that are maybe not as athletically gifted, you're going to get in later rounds. I think will fit best. Jalen Husky is tempting. I will say that. But I do like a lot of the players in the edge class, and especially with this team where you had Landon Jackson tears his PCL and his ACL, and now he's done until middle of next year. You have been continuously having this rotation of players at the edge opposite Greg Rousseau, who are just continuously coming in as veterans, Leonard Floyd, Von Miller, now Joey Bosa. I think you need to invest in getting a player on the opposite side there that can be an impact player, combined with whenever Landon Jackson comes back and you have Michael Hoyt coming back off the injury, you can definitely have a deeper group at that point. So I'm going to go with a player that I really like. I think he's a really strong pass rusher at this point with a lot of tools in his bag, having long arms and strength in his upper body, as well as being an underrated run defender at this point. I think maybe it's just me doing podcasts with Newt too much, but I think the fact that he has solid run defense reps on tape, while he does have other games where he is washed out a bit, I do think Gabe Akis is a player that can be an every down player for the Bills, especially with that size and what they value in their edges, especially. So I do think complimenting Gergeso there with an Akis, adding to that defensive end rotation is going to be where I'm going to go with that pick.
I mean, I love it. I'm a Gabe Akis guy. Yeah, there are some serious concerns about the run. I don't know if I've seen a player defend a read option worse consistently. But from the pass rush standpoint, there is just so much to like. I love him as an athlete. Tasmanian Devil, he's got really good arm usage. So I'm a big fan of that pick, and I think he'd be a perfect player for the Bills.
I love the call out for the read option because that is definitely the reps where like I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, that looks so ugly. Like those run reps, especially, were the ones where I was like, okay, I understand why people are saying this, but for me, that's a lot more neck and up, shoulders and up. Like that's going to be where you're going to try to rep that into him. It's not from a lack of him having the size and length and being able to stack and shed blocks. He can do that, and he shows that off in pass rush as well as with reps in the run defense game. So I think just getting him more seasoned and more used to playing as a traditional base end in an even front, and then allowing him to grow into that role a bit more, while having a Landon Jackson who's coming out of the draft, his upside was size, length, run defense, maybe some lacking juice at pass rusher. Having Greg Rousseau is one of the best run defending edgers on the other side of the formation. I do think he'll be insulated enough until he learns how to meet up to that next level and to that standard. So I do love that. I don't love this pick of Anthony Hill Jr., not because I don't love the player and the fit to the team, but it means my boy Sean Dolak isn't going to be getting as many reps next season, which is upsetting to me for me to hear. But Anthony Hill Jr., 6'4" linebacker, matchup style player from Texas, where he's able to move around, has a ton of athleticism for size, has a ton of length, definitely improved on his tackle rate this past season as opposed to seasons prior. I do think he's a unique player with how his usage is going to be, because he does have that movement skills and ability to flow with the ball as well as in coverage, but also have some blitzing profile. I struggle a bit with him as a traditional like stack and shed linebacker in the middle, despite having the size. You know, he's 6'4", 240. I do think that he's a player that, despite having what you would expect to be a good profile for that, I'm not the highest on that. But in a defense where you have a ton of penetration up front with the Rams, and you're looking for linebackers to be kind of that cleanup and move around the formation and chase the backs from the backside, I do think Anthony Hill Jr. does fit well with the Rams there. So I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about him.
Yeah, I like the fit as far as, you know, infusing that linebacker group with some raw talent. I do think he's probably more of a run and chase than a guy who's going to naturally, come downhill, stay square to gaps, stack and shed, and play physical, play up to his size. But I do think, the Rams have always been able to make do with what they have at linebacker, right? Like Sean Dolac was very, underappreciated, and he's going to become a solid player. Omar Spates is another one who, had a lot of run at first in his cycle and then kind of fell off the radar, and they've gotten more out of him. I could see them using Anthony Hill Jr. as kind of a, not a hybrid, but kind of a attack linebacker who can be a run and chase on early downs, and then use him as a versatile blitzer on later downs where he can, sear through gaps with that, explosion and that range and that ankle flexion and bend. That it would be a really interesting role for him. I do think he'd have to develop some of the take on technique elements of it, but for the Rams in particular, I think it's a pretty compelling pick. I'm trying to remember who the Rams picked in round 1. I know they picked Ty Simpson and Jermod McCoy. That was the other one. So corner and then quarterback. I would have maybe tried to get a Cam Curl replacement at this stage. I would have looked at safety potentially. But if the value wasn't there at safety, maybe you can go with, I know Rob Havenstein is a free agent too, so I maybe would have looked at tackle. But I again, the upside is really there to be a potential X factor if he can improve his take on technique.
So have you guys talked about Isaiah World or Kristen Miller yet? Or Akeem Mesidor?
Ooh, yeah, we missed that stretch.
Freeling? Yeah.
All right, so real quick on all of these. Monroe Freeling, I love the building blocks athletically. He's explosive. And for a guy who's 6'7", 315, he's very flexible. I think he's very good at swiveling his anchor beneath him. I don't think any of the transition, lapses come into play for him despite his size. So even though his hands are a little raw, he's very rudimentary as far as just getting his hands on guys. And he's got an 84-inch wingspan. So that's pretty effective more often than not when you can match guys and stay square and then latch on. But I think he's got all of the foundational elements that you want. So I'm a big fan of that one for the Packers. They tend to like guys with position flex. He sticks at tackle for sure. But I think he allows you a little more flexibility across the line. Akeem Mesidor, I love the player. I love the value. The only concern I have with the Steelers in particular, they have TJ Watt, they have Alex Highsmith, they have Jack Sawyer, who they drafted last year.
Don't disrespect my guy, Nick Herbig.
Or Nick Herbig too. Well, isn't he? The only reason I didn't mention him isn't he in a contract year?
He might be. You're right. He might
Okay.
be upcoming up because he's a 2021 pick.
Yeah, so I was wondering if they were just going to let him go and someone else would reap the rewards there. But I think the Steelers, they probably have bigger needs elsewhere. But Akeem Mesidor is just a game wrecker with alignment versatility. With it, he's going to be eligible for AARP benefits, yes, but at the same time, he's explosive, he's powerful at the point, and I think he's got the pass rush bag you want to. He's a great player, so I love the player, love the pick. I'm not sure if the Steelers didn't have other needs they could have attended to. I don't know if they've taken a corner yet, for instance, but again, no complaints about the player.
I lied. He was a 2023 pick, so he has one more year left on his contract. So he's gonna be
cool.
He's gonna be on the Steelers for this upcoming season, and then he'll be a free agent.
Nice. Cool. And then was there another one that we didn't cover? Scroll up real
Kristen
quick.
Miller to the Chargers.
Yeah, Kristen Miller and Isaiah World. So real quick, I love the Kristen Miller pick. He's got cinder blocks for hands, very, very powerful at the point. I think he can stack and shed in the run game, and he's got some short area twitch to mold as a pass rusher. He was coming on down the stretch this year in particular. So I think for the Chargers, I think it's a really good pick. Getting someone who can reset the line and hold up against displacement and generate his own inside. Isaiah World for the Jaguars is a really interesting pick because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, would this be replacing Walker Little at tackle potentially, or replacing someone inside? Because I think World projects better as a guard inside. I think he's still pretty raw with his hand usage. I think he's not the most flexible either. He's very athletic on the linear plane as far as getting out in space as a puller, exploding into contact and kind of generating raw power. But I don't think he's operationally sound enough to be a tackle day one, and I don't think he's flexible enough to insulate recovery capacity. So I think I would prefer him moving inside to guard. So if you're looking at it for a tackle, I'd maybe look elsewhere. But as far as tone setters go, right, imposing their will at the point and just being nasty, there's no one who makes more of an impact within that lens than World. He's got a lot of things to clean up. I have more of a late day 2, early day 3 on him.
So when the pick was made specifically for Isaiah World, I believe that was made by Chris, and Chris said it was for a Walker Little replacement.
All right, yeah. So if you're looking for a tackle replacement, I personally would look elsewhere. But if you are that high on World's talent, I can't fault you for that because he's very athletic. He's long. He's got the natural mass that you want, the physicality. If they drafted him that high as a tackle, I would try and double up at tackle in day 3. Try and get some more dart throws there, just to improve your odds. But to my knowledge, they have a lot of picks in this class anyway, so I would double dip there if you can.
I'm gonna have to be. This will be the part where I definitely disagree with Ian the most so far is what you said. Just because World was my last remaining first round grade on the board, just because he's a guy that has, like you were saying, all the length in the world, athleticism for size, like is insane. His ability to get off the spot, move, and for a Jaguars team that wanted to be able to run the ball a lot, and they've already kind of successfully been able to start doing that. Adding a guy that can be an absolute mammoth on the outside and still get out and move in space, like you're saying, as a puller or going out into space on a screen pass and things like that, I do think is a good player that attracts a lot of gravity and can be a disruptor for them. I do think his pass rush or his pass blocking sets are definitely having room to grow. He has long arms, but doesn't really have the necessary ability to use them as best or as effective as you'd like. So I do understand where you'd see maybe moving into guard, but the fact that he is already kind of more inflexible in his stance makes me believe trying to get him down to a consistent 3-point stance and keeping his pad level low enough for a quarterback to throw over the middle with him in front brings some problems. As well as I think he has enough athleticism and the length to cut the angles down when guys try to attack him with speed and attack the top of the arc where he's not able to really reach them with his foot speed right away. I do think that can compensate for that a bit more. So for me, I think he is a true tackle. If he's not a tackle, I don't think he's in the league. I don't think he's a player that can really transition to the interior just from the amount of length he has starts to become a negative once you move more inside. And then also just the lack of flexibility there for just in his stance in general. I do think as a tackle, you can utilize him more, and especially if you incorporate more of the RPO game, I'll ask him to do some more short drops or have some more schematic ways to utilize him. And if you're going to be drafting him, especially if you have an offensive coach like a Liam Cohen, you should be having a plan coming into it to be able to anticipate maximizing his abilities out there, which I do think he has athletic and size upside and ceiling for days as a tackle.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if we're talking about QB friendly schemes too, or tackle friendly schemes, I think that one could be a more tackle friendly scheme. Scheming more quick throws, things where you can get him out in space and have him thrive in that phase. I can see the vision for that for sure.
So Ian, you're on the clock for the Raiders, who have taken Mendoza and Besantis, and
Okay.
This is, I believe, their final pick of day 1 and 2 here.
Okay, cool. So we've got quarterback, IOL. I'm going to check edge again, see what's there.
Can I make a suggestion when you're done looking at this edge group?
What's your suggestion?
I was looking at Jeremy Bernard as your wide receiver replacement for Jacoby Myers.
I was thinking that. I was thinking that. I saw him at the top. I was pondering it. Can we scroll down the receiver board too? Because I know there's
Ted Hurst is another one.
Ted Hurst is
Yeah, Ted
another
Hurst.
one.
Cooper. So right now, I've seen more wide receivers drop in this mock
Mm-hmm.
than I've seen, right? Because Omar Cooper Jr. still on the board, as well as Bernard still on the board in round 3. Feels
Yeah.
like a really good
Yeah.
wide receiver board.
That's what I was
Bernard-
thinking. The Seahawks pick.
Yeah, this is around where I value Bernard. I'm maybe a little bit higher, like in the 60 range for me. But it's really good value. I think Elijah Surratt is a little bit quicker, a little bit more fluid as a separator, which I mean that's reflected in where he went. He went round 1. But I think Jeremy Bernard, very QB friendly target. He's got good catch point composure, good body control, explosive rack threat as well. He's more of a zone beater than a man beater, I think, as far as separation goes. He's more fluid than fast and twitchy, but is a guy who again has that spatial awareness and he's got the contact balance and he's a great blocker. Again, the utility, you're never going to worry about that. So I'm seriously considering it. Let's go to corner, though. I know the Raiders have a lot of young talent at corner, but I know they have some guys who are more on one-year deals that aren't really around for the long haul. Okay, so we got some interesting ones here. Is Traden Stukes still on the board?
Yes, he is.
All right, we're
And
going.
I know that you like Stukes.
I
We
like Stukes a lot,
podcasted on
yeah.
corners. Yeah.
I like Stukes a lot, but here's the thing: I'm a big fan of this receiver class. There are a lot of names on the board still that I like. I'm going to gamble on the value of the class. I'm going to go with Traden Stukes, get my nickel, and a guy who can rotate back to safety if you need him to as well. He's another guy who kind of fits the glue guy compartment for me, where he can play nickel safety on a situational basis, even boundary a little bit if you need him to. Definitely more of an off man and zone guy than a press man, but playing from depth. I think he's explosive closing. I think he's got great range coming downhill. And attacking route breaks. And then as far as coverage mobility goes, he's fluid, transitioning. He can sync and redirect with ease. And then he's shown that he can engage physically in both phases too. So big fan of his game. He's going to be an older rookie, but I think right out of the jump, he raises your floor and he can be a really, really good player to speak.
I know we just talked Bernard a lot for that pick, but now that the Eagles are on the board, I'm thinking this might be a Hurst over Bernard spot. With the anticipation of AJ Brown being gone moving forward, I do think that is a place where you try to find another receiver to complement what you have there. You do have Smith still there, so you're not totally dying for receiver talent. You did grab Stokes to replace we're presuming to be moving on to Dallas Goedert. So I do think there are players to replace that. I think for me, Hurst, his ability to have a frame that still looks like he can add on some weight, and I think that's where a lot of my downside, where I have him as like my top round 3 grade of the wide receivers for Hurst, is just because I do think he just struggles with some physicality at the point of the catch, as well as getting off the line of scrimmage if they do get hands on him. I do think a lot of his problems come down to just adding functional strength to his frame, and I do think he has a frame to add more muscle on. So getting him to 200 pounds plus, I do think will maximize his ability, and then he'll be able to fill in that kind of AJ Brown hole for the Eagles. So I do like Bernard there. I do still think he works within that offense, especially for a team where if you're trying to find guys to give Jalen Hurts the easiest throws possible, you have Stokes to be the player to create some more dynamic plays up the seam, and you have Bernard to be that kind of zone attacker, like Ian was saying. I think he phrased that very well, where he is a coverage beater, but more so zone over man. If you're looking, especially in the NFL, where you're going to have some better athletes at the man coverage, in man coverage as opposed to zone. So I do think that would be another great add for the Eagles there. Just adding offensive talent in general to replace the void that AJ Brown's going to leave for you there.
I'd agree with what you said. Another option I kind of like for the Eagles is Brennan Thompson, the wide receiver from Mississippi State. You want someone who can create quick separations, got great speed for Jalen Hurts, or look no further. I think at the Senior Bowl, he's not a big talk about name right now, but he's going to the Senior Bowl next week, and I think he's going to be one of the biggest risers from that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that as a potential option soon too.
I'll throw in my hat for Kevin Coleman Jr. from Missouri too, real quick. Brennan Thompson is the speed guy, and I love the speed. I think Kevin Coleman Jr. gets slept on big time with the quickness, with the twitch, the separation skills against man, the ability to splice and zone, and really good metrics at the catch point for a smaller guy too. The Eagles have options. I think that's the crux of the lesson here. Day 2, they've got options if they want them.
I love the Trotter pick for the Texans. Again, rich getting richer. I think two of the 3 picks have been on defense so far, or maybe all 3 have been on defense because they went Thieneman in the first. Then they went
Chris Bell as well.
Oh, they did Chris Bell as well. You're right. So I think Trotter here is your Henry To'o replacement, where I feel like he's a phenomenal player when looking to add at your Sam linebacker position, or just having a player that you're looking to be the more attacker in your defense, coming downhill and thumping with the offensive lineman and being able to attack everything in front of him. I don't love him as a player that's going to be dropping coverage. We have players already at the second level, and then now you've added Thieneman, and you have Petrie in the slot to be kind of that same kind of position player for them on that level, where Trotter can be your straight up come downhill, punch some offensive lineman in the mouth, and impact that run game. Again, fitting into what they want to do defensively, which is make it a living hell for you to drive down the field and score points on their offense. So I do love that as an eventual replacement for Henry To'o in that defense.
I mean, I was just hyping up Brennan Thompson, and there he goes. I think he's going to be someone who will continuously rise up draft boards. He's very small. His size, I don't have the exact numbers around me, but I believe it's around 5'9", 170. So he's not going to be a big player, but he's someone who just absolute burner. He ran, I believe, a 10.3, somewhere around there, 10.4, 100
I
meter
believe
dash
it
in
was
high school.
10.18 at his best. I
So-
could be wrong though.
Some,
but
some
it's
insane
crazy.
like that.
Yeah.
Like, as someone who knows that every time you are like under 11 seconds is what a good 100 meter dash is. That's kind of the baseline I go by. And he's torching that. Like, this kid's going to fly. He's going to run a crazy 40
Yeah.
time.
when he runs
And
the
he's
40,
going to get a lot of eyes.
we're gonna see him in top 50 mocks.
Oh,
We-
100%. Like,
sure.
I think he's going very at low 4.2s, I think, in that. He's so fast, and I'm excited to see that. In the Eagles offense, I think he'd be perfect.
Well, and then Drew, you're up at pick 73 here for your Saints.
Can we look at running back? I want to see if my guy is still on the board. Is Emmett Johnson still here? Oh, yeah. The Saints were so successful with Boom and Zoom as their running backs. Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara were so good for so long. And I'm not saying this duo will live up to it, but Devin Neal as the Boom and Emmett Johnson as a Zoom, you have similar archetypes there. Emmett Johnson's so elusive. He doesn't have home run speed. I don't care. He's got, if you play Madden, he's got the first one free ability, always equipped as an X factor. I mean, it's so tough for the first person to bring him down. He's got a great juke, great spin, and he's just slippery. He fights through contact to get extra yards, and he won't be for everyone because his play strength is lacking and he doesn't have home run speed. But in a nuanced role, or the role that I think the Saints would have him in, he's perfect. He's a great receiver as well. I didn't mention that, but a very capable receiver.
Jim, can we do another wave of rapid fire reactions? See any picks that we've missed here? I think there might
we
have
didn't
been a
get Chris
couple.
McClellan or D'Angelo Pons.
There might have been a couple at the back end of round 2 as well.
Yeah, Jonah Coleman to the Patriots. I don't think we've talked about.
Mhm.
So
Did we
I
talk
know,
about Big Citrus to the Falcons way
No,
earlier
I
in
don't.
the
I don't
season?
think we talked about. Yeah, we missed that. How do we miss Big Citrus, man? Oh my goodness, that's
go
a fun
for
one.
it,
though.
Owen.
That's a fun one.
So yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see what the scheme is going to be moving forward with Atlanta. I think coming in for a team that's going to want to run more of an odd front scheme or even an even front scheme, I think Citrus fits both of them. Like Dominic Orange is a player that his pass rush definitely fell off from last year to this year, but if you look at last year's tape, especially seeing him have that level of athleticism for a guy who's in that 330 plus frame at nose tackle was something that really drew my eye to him, and I absolutely love him as like I think he's my D tackle 2 or 3. No, he's D tackle 3 behind Banks, and he's a player that if he can regather any of that pass rush upside he had while still maintaining that size and ability to anchor against the run and be able to attack interior blockers while having those speed rushers on the outside, I do think he's a player that I think can go in that same range and is a great ad, and that'll make that Falcons defensive line one of the most imposing, in especially in the division, but across the whole league as well.
Yeah, I like the idea of Ruke Arororo and Brandon Dorless once he recovers from his injury. Unfortunately, I love the idea of them being able to play around Orange as an orbit nose tackle, right? Dom Orange, whether he can reclaim the max pass rush juice that we saw from him remains to be seen, but his motor always runs hot. And as a nose tackle, you want him to be able to just absorb power, absorb combos. And he does that. He's really good at limiting displacement. He can stack and shed. So big fan of, I think he does all the functional things you want a guy at the fulcrum to do really well. What were the other picks at the back end of round 2 real quick that we missed?
Jonah Coleman to the Patriots.
I'll be honest. I don't like that one a ton. You have okay. Actually, let me back up. Ramondre Stevenson, if his contract situation is a little bit trepidatious in like 2027, then I like it a little more for sure. So I don't have his contract information out the top of my head right now. So I'll back that up. If there's a chance that he's leaving soon, then I'm on board with this. I think.
Well, I believe he's a UFA. They would have
is
to
he
re-sign
this?
or extend him.
Okay.
Unless
okay.
somebody
No, they
corrects me on that.
extended him.
He got a
He's-
4-year, $36 million contract
wow.
in 2024.
But there is a potential out after next season. So in 2020,
Okay.
after
Okay.
2026, they can have an out and take a significantly less amount of dead cap.
So
hit.
Randy has podcasted with Draft Professor more than once. So I know he really likes Jonah Coleman.
I like Jonah Coleman too.
So he
Yeah.
will. Anyways,
My big thing is the value, right? Like the Patriots, who do they pick in round 1 again? They picked I'm blanking.
They took Pregnon.
They took Pregnon round 1. So interior offensive line, I would have maybe tried to get a more dynamic edge talent here if there's someone still on the board. Now I get in this edge class, right? There's a little bit of a drop off in terms of guarantees, or you're trying to bank on a guy that's an outlier size wise, like R. Mason Thomas, or other players who are a little bit more. But I think that running back, if you just took Travion Henderson, I would maybe wait until day 3. But again, I can understand it. I would maybe tight end too. I know Hunter Henry is, I think, on a shorter deal as well. But who were some of the other picks again? It was Romello Height, I believe. Did he go?
Yeah, I'll scroll up for
To
you.
the Broncos.
Yeah. Okay.
Romello Height to the Broncos, which I think plays really well because they went Banks for that 5-tech role, which they were looking to add to on the defensive line. And now Height, they have a glut on that edge there with Cooper. They have a ton of players that I think can also fit that. Height could be more of an off-ball type player for them and have some of the other guys be more down the line of scrimmage. But for a team that is as multiple and as versatile as they are in their front, adding more players to that edge group and that D-line group, I'm never going to hate. I do think maybe I would have waited on to maybe go round 3. I really like some other like depth pieces you get towards the middle or back end of day 3, where you have players that are way more skill specific, but you can still get them in and fit them into that position for that defense specifically. But I do think Height is going to be a player that, like, if you're going to make that investment and you want to swing for the fences, he's going to be a guy that's going to raise the ceiling for that positional group in that scheme specifically.
I can see it for sure. I do have concerns about his power profile and how it's going to translate, because he has poor mass for the position, and he doesn't have very good length either, right? So I think that's my main concern. I probably would have, again, tight end is a potential area of need for the Broncos. I would have maybe tried to go Oscar Delp or someone else there as a more functional pick for the offense. But again, I can see it. I think with that scheme, a player like Height, who is just a supercharged athlete. I mean, he is so energetic, effervescent at the point, so good at creating angle advantages for himself and getting tackles to lurch and lose sync. And then he's got the closing speed too, and the motor runs hot. I definitely see it for sure, just the valuation. But again, I think with the ways that they can move guys around and be versatile and while still attacking downhill, I can see the vision.
And then was Jacoby Lane, which I think, Drew, that was your pick for the Seahawks at the back end of the round 2 there. So you want to go ahead and talk about that guy?
Yeah, for the Seahawks, I mean, you got JSN. He's an outstanding receiver. You got Rashid Shaheed. That's my boy. Pure speed. But I think the one thing they really are lacking in their wide receiver room is a big contested catch X receiver. And I did love the receiving room. I thought about Ted Hurst because he is that X, 6'3". But at the end of the day, for that contested catch, which I think what they need the most, I was going to go with Jacoby Lane. I mean, Seahawks just need one. AJ Barner right now is, if I had to guess, probably their contested catch threat. So I have some concerns around Jacoby Lane. I'm not the biggest fan of him. I think there's a lot he needs to improve, especially with the route running and separation and all that. So definitely not a perfect prospect, but for what the Seahawks need, I think he could be a great fit.
Yeah, and then Chris McClellan there at the top of round 3. He's one of my biggest guys in this class, just because he is a super athlete when it comes to size, comparing him to nose tackles, being able to move laterally. They had him playing in a ton of space for Missouri there. And while I do think there is some significant downside when it comes to him as a true pass rusher, like there's a difference between him and Lee Hunter, where I think Lee Hunter as a nose tackle can move, but also has some pass rush juice to his game when it comes to his technique and be able to beat guys one-on-one. McClellan doesn't really have that, but what he does do is the fact that he has such long arms, good profile, physical profile, and has athleticism that even though he's not going to beat consistently guys one-on-one in the interior, he draws and has pass rush gravity to him, where you're gonna have to devote 2 blockers to him just from his amount of mass, ability to collapse that pocket through size and strength. So you're able to open up one-on-ones for the other guys despite not being an overall elite pass rusher yourself. So I'm a big fan of Chris McClellan. Having him next to I'm blanking on the D tackle. Walter Nolan from last year. Having those two on the interior and pass rushing, they have some good pieces there to open up and have some plus pass rush from the interior there now with that addition of Chris McClellan.
Yeah, one combination that always plays on the interior defensive line is having good natural leverage and proportional length. And Chris McClellan has that combination for sure. And he's a great athlete. So I like that pick. And I think he definitely gets slept on in this class. He's a guy who sometimes gets lost in the noise in the middle rounds, but I could definitely see him cracking the top 100, especially I believe he's at the Senior Bowl. It's one of the two. I don't know.
Yeah, he's at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, so he'll have a chance to kind of show off the tools there, and I think they'll stand out.
We got D'Angelo Pons to the
D'Angelo
Titans.
Pons, he went round
That's-
3. Oh
Yeah,
my
that's a
gosh.
steal. The Titans
Bro,
had a spectacular draft.
that's crazy. I love that pick.
I mean, yeah, if
So,
he was,
Drew, remind everybody why you think the Titans had a spectacular draft.
I mean, Jordan Tyson first. That's one of my guys. He probably would have been wide receiver 1 if he was fully healthy. He's got a great route runner, nuanced. Zion Young, round 2, spectacular. I mean, that's my edge 2. I think he's great value. Then D'Angelo Pons. If he was even 2 or 3 inches taller, you're talking about a first-round cornerback. I mean, what he's done for Indiana, especially this playoff run, is unprecedented. He's just got such good ball skills, able to mirror a opposing receiver. Can't really be an X to the next level because he's only 5'9", but I love D'Angelo Pons. He's just a dog that's going to be a huge contributor on your defense for years to come.
I saw someone take Skylar Bell. I love that pick. The Jaguars, Skylar Bell, big fan. I was considering Skylar Bell with the Raiders pick too before I took Stukes. So Bell, he's got inside-outside versatility. He's a great. I think he's a really good functional athlete for sure. With quickness and kind of route running building blocks too. But he's just a 3-level threat, man. It's really hard to pull holes in this game aside from not having elite size, not having elite vertical athleticism, but again, he's switched up. He can separate against man. He can modulate spacing in zone. Really good player, just straight up. His production this year is insane. Every time I look at it, like he was literally the UConn offense. And credit to Joe Fagnano at QB too, a QB who could distribute the ball, didn't take too many risks. Another potential guy on day 3 who could carve out a solid career. But Skylar Bell was the engine of that offense. So going into that Jaguars offense, depending on what happens with Myers, I don't know what's going to happen if they're going to extend him or not. But I think Skylar Bell is that movement Z who can give them some flexibility to, like you said, with Travis Hunter, do what they want to do.
Yeah, I think the next person I want to highlight is going to be Zachariah Branch to the Cincinnati Bengals. There, looking for a Charlie Jones replacement in the slot and as your kick returner. I don't think you can do much better than Zachariah Branch there. Having 2 players who win with size and with speed on the outside, allowing somebody to be opened up in the middle of the field from your slot position. I do think that Branch, being that kind of firecracker, explosive, doesn't need to be the best receiver. You don't have to worry about him coming in and taking on reps where you're requiring him to win and create separation because they're going to be focusing on him. He's going to be the afterthought of afterthoughts on that offense, but being able to be the one who has the most home run hitting possibilities. So I think adding that skill set to that offense to take away some of the pressure on the outside guys and diversifying who can get the ball in their hands and where you have to really worry about the ball going to for the Bengals is something I'm really excited for with that pick there.
Devin Moore is such a Steelers corner, but I like it. I like it a lot. He's a good player.
That was an admin pick. I'm glad that you liked that decision by me. It
It's
gives me
good.
warm fuzzies. Thank you.
It's good. It's good. No, he's one of those guys who's just like, I watched him the first time and I liked him, and then I watched him again and I realized I might have underappreciated some of the things that were there. But he's another guy who's 6'3" and long, but I think he moves really well for his size. I think he's pretty fluid for his size, breaking over top routes and clicking and closing. I think he's got the foot speed that you want for recalibration, athleticism. Just a quality player. Omar Cooper to the Dolphins. I do like that one for sure. I think there was someone early in the cycle who compared him to Paris Campbell as a prospect. I'm not parroting that comp, but I do respect it and I see it. And that's kind of, archetypally, that's what I come back to. I think as far as, comparing him to Elijah Surratt, I don't think he's quite as refined as a route runner. I think he's got room to keep expanding that route tree, but 6 foot, over 200, he's incredibly explosive on the vertical plane. He can stretch seams. He can stretch the field vertically. A great rack threat with that combined explosion and the contact balance too. And then at the catch point, I mean, that's well documented. He's got the body control. He can extend beyond his frame. He can make really tough catches in clutch situations. The Penn State catch, the most notable example. But I think he's a good player. I think he's a good pick for the Dolphins in this range. I think schematically he allows you to do certain things as far as being a multi-level threat where you can scheme him easy targets in the rack phase, and then he can also stretch the field vertically, create space for other targets too. So a player who's still scratching the surface of what he can become, but already has a functional purpose for you.
So I have been making the Miami picks. Anthony, if you want to put in who you want for Miami, Miami has 3 third-round picks. So Miami has done Mansour Delane, Kamari Ramsey, then Omar Cooper Jr. in round 3. They still have 2 more third-round picks. Anybody have suggestions for what they would do at 87?
I would probably add some juice to the D line or offensive line, something on the along the trenches, just because that was where they were kind of lacking.
Yeah, I was thinking either edge or like interior offensive line. I know Drew Shelton is there. He could be a good investment, but let's check edge and see if there's anyone. I do like Derek
offensive tackle from Texas A&M. So there's a couple because that could be Trey Zune or Demetrius Crownover.
Yeah, I think Trey Zune probably transitions to the interior at the next level.
I think he's a center.
Yeah, I think he's a center too. And they actually played him at center down the stretch this year, and he had some good reps. Yeah, he played against
Missouri.
Yeah, Demetrius Crownover, dude is massive. I mean, he's just tough to get around, point blank. He's a little raw technically, and I don't think he has great knee bend and overarching flexibility. But at his size, the linear explosion is there. I think the hand power is there. And in the run game, he's just a people mover because he just, he gets his legs under you and then he just surges forward and he can pave open lanes that way. So he can be kind of a snow plow. A little bit, like I said, raw technically. Who are the other offensive tackles on the board? That's a good. Oh, you've already got it pulled up. Look at that. Blake Miller. He's still on the board. I would probably go Blake Miller here if I'm being honest. Again, you talk about functional athleticism, it's there in spades. I know he has some struggles with anchor footwork at times against power, but that's one where all of the athletic tools are there, and I'm comfortable banking on it in round 3. He's rangy. He's got the proportional length that you want. He does have the knee bend and leverage acquisition, I think, in the recovery athleticism. Just has to improve the anchor a little bit, but so really good.
We sniped the 49ers from Blake Miller.
Oh, no.
So great pick, Ian. Great pick.
Oh, man. Blake Miller to the 49ers would have been lethal, too. I'm sorry. Oh, my God. I'm ruining nights tonight. I apologize. I feel bad now. But at the same time, if I'm the GM, I got to make the pick. Got to send the card in.
So, Ian, were you picking for the Bears?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So the Bears are up. As a reminder, the Bears got Malachi Lawrence.
And then it was Caleb Lomu. Yeah,
so Lomu and Lawrence.
Let's check defensive tackle. Let's see if there's any value here. Okay. Daryl Jackson Jr. is an interesting one here.
I'm pretty high on Ahmad Moten. I don't know what your opinions are on him.
I'm high on Xavier Harris, too. That's another one. So
that's right, yeah. Ahmad Moten, I will be honest. I need to refresh on him, but I'm also not sure he will declare. I think that's the main reason that I'm holding back there. But if he does declare, I like him a lot. Just off of what I know, well leveraged. He's got really good mass for his size, and then he's got some pass rush juice. But I will be honest, I need to refresh a little bit more. Can we scroll down the DT list a little bit? Onyedim's an interesting one. I have a day 3 on him though. I wouldn't quite take him this high.
Okay. And we're at, just for the record, we're at pick 89.
Okay.
So
if you want some more time, we can go over some of the picks we've missed. I know there were a couple guys that came off that we already kind of talked a bit about.
Let's go. Can we look at corner? Because I know the Bears have Kyler Gordon. I know they have Jalen Johnson. And I know Nashawn Wright played very well this year, but he's on a short-term deal. I know Tyreek Stevenson's deal is going to be up soon. Could maybe get a long-term investment at corner. Davison Igbinosun is an interesting one. He's got the length and athleticism that I look for. Can we scroll down a little bit more here too? Just make sure there aren't any names I'm forgetting in the moment. Okay. Go over one page real quick, just to be sure. Okay, yeah. I do like Igbinosun a lot. I know he's kind of polarizing. I know, especially in 2024, the penalties were a big issue. Not using targeted physicality with discipline. I think he improved that a little bit this year. Definitely has room to keep refining that. But as far as corners go, who are 6'1", 6'2", I think he's really, really fluid on redirections. I think he's quick and twitched up for his size, explosive on the attack. He's got the vertical speed to run with guys. And then at the same time, too, when he does apply targeted physicality correctly, properly at the catch point, he has some really compelling plays on the ball where he's playing it with precision, with proper timing. And I think the experience and playing run support with physicality too is a big plus. So Davison Igbinosun, sound run support player, a lot of coverage upside. I'm probably going to go with him here for the Bears. Ideally, he's not a full-time starter year one, but I feel comfortable knowing he can play a number of different techniques right away, and eventually he can be a really solid player.
So, Owen, the suggestion was to go interior offensive line for the Dolphins here. Any interior offensive lineman here that you would be pounding the table for Miami?
I mean, just off of value alone, Brian Parker being there still, and Jake Slaughter, like I have a ton of guys that are still I have higher values on than what we're currently drafting. I think Brian Parker, he's projected inside to be a center, but the fact that he plays left tackle in college and we're projecting him inside regardless, I do think he can play guard spots as well. So for a team that needs versatility, that they can never make it through an entire season where they have at least 5 or 6 offensive linemen consistently playing throughout the season, I do think grabbing a guy with the positional versatility that Brian Parker brings would be the best pick here for me when it comes to level of talent plus the versatility.
Okay, and then you're on the clock for Buffalo at pick 91.
So I was debating between a couple players. Luckily, they got drafted already, so they got thinned out a bit. So I was debating Jacob Rodriguez here. He ended up going to, I think, the Panthers earlier in this round. And so you're highlighting the guy that I'm now bouncing to. So I'm between him and Husky at the moment. I did mention earlier how I'm a big fan of Huskies, and I do think that his skill set will complement Cole Bishop's a lot. His ability to play as the downhill, closer to line of scrimmage, buzzing down, strong safety type player is where he fits best. And I think complementing him with Husky, former corner, transition to safety, still a good tackler, willing to play above his weight class, but is definitely more comfortable in space, in free zone a lot more. But I do love me some Red Murdoch, and I think this is a good value for where I think I have him graded, and the Bills need more of that Mike linebacker type, and I do like my hometown guys. So yeah, let's screw it. We'll go with Red Murdoch. That is my guy. The Bills I'm tired of seeing Terrell Bernard as my Mike linebacker in the center of the defense. Shaq Thompson took over halfway through the season, and the fact that he can play downhill and actually duel it out with offensive linemen and create his own separation and gaps in the run game is so much significantly different than when you have Bernard at the mic. This allows you to have Bernard come back in, play the will backer, can still be your team captain on that side of the ball and make some calls, but he now steps in as the replacement for Milano. You have Red come in as the mic. You have Shaq Thompson come back on a shorter term deal to maybe coach him up a bit, and you have Dorian Williams as your Sam. You can come back around double dip if you really need for some more depth there. But I think Red fits exactly what they need at that position when it comes to skill set comparison to what they currently have and what they've been lacking in so many seasons.
So, Ian, where do you have Red Murdoch graded right now?
I will be honest, he's one that I need to refresh on. I'm familiar with the player. I have an impression of him, but I need to update my grade on him. I heading into the year, I think it was early to mid day 3, but I do need to refresh on him before I get a concrete evaluation.
So there's a question in the chat about, okay, they want to see the big board. The way I designed this simulator is the boards will fluctuate based upon who gets mock drafted to that team. So that's why, for example, when you see the 49ers draft, you see some offensive linemen at the top. But when we go to the Rams, it could be a completely different set of positions based upon who has been picked high for the Rams. So, okay, so the pick comes in, but I wanted to be able to explain the big boards for a little bit. So Jude Bowery from the Boston College went to the 49ers. So, Drew, what do you think of that pick?
I mean, I think grabbing a tackle for the 49ers is 100% right. And I do think Bowery is a very capable player. It's been weird, but Boston College has kind of become a pretty good spot for offensive linemen. You've seen a couple here, and I think Bowery's going to be the next one. I haven't. That's one guy I need to refresh, and I watched him I think a couple months ago, but I haven't gotten eyes on him recently. So if Ian, Owen, one of you two want to chime in on that.
Yeah, Jude Bowery, interesting player. When I watched him in the preseason, I felt like he had early round upside. Thought he could be a day 2 pick for sure. I don't think his development stagnated a little bit, but I still like him a lot in either the late round 3, round 4, round 5 range, mid round range. Still a big fan of what he has to the table. I think athletically, he's got pretty good foot speed and recalibration athleticism for his size. A little stiff in the hips, a little high hipped with his build, but pretty good knee bend and proportional length where he can acquire leverage and then, shot guys with forceful punches. Really physical player too. He can drive power. He's got great rotational torque on seal out blocks. And his heavy handedness can help as a pass protector too, jarring guys, getting them off balance. So still things in his game to iron out. I think he does need to keep improving the upper lower sink, especially not having that high end flexibility. But I do like the combination of athleticism and driving power, especially for the 49ers. I think you could stick him a tackle, could potentially shift him inside to guard if the hand usage remains inconsistent. But he's a good player. He's a physical player. I think he's got the traits that you want to invest in, especially in this range. I like it.
Yeah, I think skill to pick here, where I think I had him graded out exactly where he got taken right here at the back end of the 3rd round. You have a guy that has a ton of athleticism, is smart, coming from that Boston College scheme. Every time I'm watching edge rushers, whenever they have a chance to play Boston College, I'm throwing that on because I want to see how they handle the adversity of playing against a guy who has just the nasty and edge that Bowery plays with, and the athleticism he comes off the edge or off the tackle spot with. I do think he needs to work on technique more, especially when keeping his feet going when he's engaged with contact, both in the pass protection and run blocking. Like, he can definitely he'll throw his body around and want to pave out roads, but sometimes he'll engage and then his feet will die and then they'll get off those blocks a little more easily than you expect him to, especially when you see reps where he's firing all cylinders and you're like, okay, this guy can absolutely collapse angles and clear out lanes for your running back, especially in the C and D gap. So I do think as a player, I like a lot of the tenacity and the movement and a ton of the things that you come with it. You just need to coach him up a bit more. And I think for a team that has Trent Williams potentially for his last season, but moving forward, maybe you have one more year, put him at a spot to play, Bowery that is, and then allow him to develop into your future left tackle there.
So, Drew, you want to talk about, let's say, the last 4 or 5 picks?
Yeah. First off, for the Seahawks, I went with Keelan Rutledge, the guard from Georgia Tech. I think guard's a position the Seahawks really need to address. I mean, they have Gray Zabel, who was a great pick from last year, but on the other side, they definitely could use some help. So I was deciding between him and Cage Casey, the offensive tackle from Boise State, who will 100% transition to guard. But I ended up going with Rutledge. I just think they're both a very good run defenders. Like, they both shine there. But I think Rutledge is a little bit better of an athlete, and I think he's a little bit better in pass protection. So I'm going with him there. I think he'll be great for the Seahawks game. And I'll need to see the board again. I know Derek Moore was one of the ones. He's got an NFL frame. He's listed as 260 pounds, but he easily wears that. I think he's a pretty good athlete, translates speed to power really well, plays with good leverage. He's very smart. He gets read options. He doesn't overcommit. He plays it well. And he's very versatile as well. You can drop him back into coverage. He's a pretty good 3-4, I think, is where he'll be the best at. The pass rushing, I think he's just raw still. Lack of variety in his pass rush moves. He doesn't have a great first step or utilize it enough. And he just too often tries to bull rush and go right through the offensive lineman. So you want to see that improve, but overall, he's a really talented edge rusher. And did Logan Jones declare? Or I'm thinking of different Iowa offensive linemen maybe. I know one of them just came back. I might be mix up names, but
Cade Piper maybe.
Piper did. Yep. That's one I saw. Yeah. I mean, that whole unit is just spectacular. Logan Jones play on the interior, and there's not much to say about him. He's a typical Iowa offensive lineman, amazing against the run, good technique, good athlete, amazing power. I think he's a little bit stiff at times, but playing center, I think he can get away with that. So I think that's a really good pick. And then the last one I saw was The Godfather for the Vikings. I mean, it's hard to not love Dante Corleone. Built like a mini fridge, yet he can move and displace offensive linemen very, very well. So I think the Vikings, being someone that needs a defensive interiors, a defensive tackle, they got someone who can penetrate run gaps. It's very tough to run up the middle when the Godfather is right there. So I do really like that pick late in the third round.
Okay, so Logan Jones to the Broncos. Thoughts? Like, do you guys have a day 2 on Logan Jones?
I do.
Yeah, like late day 2, early day 3. My only issue is okay. Who's the Broncos center again? I'm blanking on his
So
name.
I was told that the only line position the Broncos need is a center.
Okay.
So that was a pick
Alex
that was made by
Forsythe.
me based on somebody a long time ago when I posted a mock draft. They said the only offensive line position the Broncos need is a center.
Well, isn't there a guy above Forsyth who just got extended?
I don't know. That's just who popped up.
Um,
Devon Key?
no.
No.
Here,
No. What
I will
yeah, the
research.
websites.
You guys keep
Okay.
going. I'll research real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so that might be an admin.
I'll talk about the Antonio Williams. I love Antonio Williams. His impact on the Clemson offense is severely underrated. At the start of the year, Clemson was struggling so much, and it stemmed from that LSU game where he got injured and Williams wasn't playing. But once he returned, you really saw that offense start to click and start to be a lot better. So I think just someone getting Williams, and I think if it's the Steelers, go ahead and draft Klubnik in the next round, in the 4th round. I think you should pair those two up, and I think Antonio Williams, he's not the most athletic. He won't produce highlight-worthy plays, but he's very smart. He gets open in zones, can create separation. He's a good route runner, can produce after the catch. He just does a lot of things well. He doesn't have that one A-list trait of him being an insane route runner, insane contested catch player, but he's just smart and a quarterback's best friend.
Yeah,
Okay,
Antonio
so
Williams.
Mr. Irrelevant has been announced. So the last pick of our draft is Max Clare of Ohio State
Ooh, I like
to
that.
the Jaguars.
Yeah. So by the way, I just finished my research. Luke Wattenberg is the center. He just got extended for 4 years.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay.
So, yeah. But yeah, Logan Jones is good. Yeah, good mock, guys. No, we can give it more thoughts.
So we just did. You guys just did 100 players in about 120 minutes, 130 minutes.
That's pretty good efficiency, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Flying through
is. When somebody was on this podcast last time, they didn't realize that, like he said, the time went so fast.
Mm-hmm.
You realize you were just podcasting for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So-
I've been in this situation before with this podcast. You know, sometimes you just get talking and then
You just
the
keep
time
going.
flies and you keep going, and all of a sudden, oh, it's dark outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's a good time, and a lot of good picks in there. I think this class in particular, every class that you find, the farther you get down the board, the more variance there is board to board. People are going to have a lot of differences with who they rank higher, and that makes for a lot of not unpredictable, but like good unpredictable, like really surprising results that get you to think about player team fits. So this was another instance of that. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of good player team fits. And yeah, excited to see what happens. I know we've still got a lot of checkpoints to get through: the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, the NFL Combine. A lot more information to procure and sift through. It's going to be a fun time. All I can say is hold on. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah.
So I want to, before we do like a quick summary, I want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat.
Yeah.
Because it was the chat that made this work, right? You guys were making the picks. We had people on the podcast talking about them. We do this every Friday, but we can't do this without every single one of you that watch the podcast and put your picks into the chat. So I and all of the draft professors truly appreciative. Drew, were you surprised that somebody didn't go in the top 100?
I mean, I would have to look at the draft board again. I think one player I do know though. I remember I said the same thing last time, but Xavier Harris, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, 6'8", 330 pounds, very good mover. It's going to be a lot of the same conversation we had with Deone Walker last year, and that's just he plays pretty high, and the stamina is kind of questionable at times. But the big thing for Harris too is off the field. He has a couple charges that he's had in his past. So I think that checking out that will be big. But on the field, he's such an impactful player. He can get after and run defense, is a very impactful pass rusher. So I was surprised to see him. And then I'd need to see the board. Cage Casey, I don't think anyone selected him. He was the other guy I was gravitating towards. But as a tackle, he won't stay there. He'll go to the interior because he's very susceptible to the edge. Not the greatest athlete, but he's just strong. Has got ironclad hands. So I'd say those are the two that kind of jumps out as players I'm surprised didn't get drafted.
Yeah. Ian, any surprises to you that didn't go in the top 100?
I'll have to look at the board again too, because they might have gone in the last few picks and I just didn't see it. But a couple guys who I was watching go down the board. Did Julian Neal get picked from Arkansas? No,
That's a big one.
Yeah,
I may have taken him to Green Bay in round 3. Give me a minute.
Okay.
I'm gonna go look.
Yeah, because he's a top 64 player for me. I'm a big fan.
Yes, I took him for Green Bay at pick 84.
Okay, cool. So that one. What about Genesis Smith, Arizona?
That's the one I was just thinking of too. I don't think
He didn't go.
He is a top 5 safety for me. I understand the concerns with run support. He's got to clean up his tackling form. He's got to clean up his angle consistency. But his primary role is going to be that single high safety, and I think he performs it very well. But he can also play splits field. He can manage 2-on-1s. He's got the coverage fluidity and the playmaking. So I'm a big fan of his. And I think he's got the size to play up and support if he can improve his technique. And then I think there was another one, Torian York from Texas A&M. Did he go?
He did not.
Okay, that's another top 64 guy for me. I'm a massive fan of his game. I know he's undersized, but he's super rangy, and he's an elite processor as far as pre-snap goes, post-snap, read and reacting, recognizing keys and crashing downhill with a ton of force and ferocity. And then in coverage, too. I think he's really good with depth discipline. He's fluid enough, with his size profile, and then he can surge into contact, play with physicality, make plays. I'm a big fan. I think he's one of the few I think guys who can really be a true Mike at the next level with his processing. So I like him.
I thought of one more. Did Jadarian Price go?
He did not.
Yeah, no,
he did not. He's another one that I'm not the highest on him, but I do really like him. Very explosive athlete. Really fast. He's got elite speed. He's a very good kick returner. I think he had 2 touchdowns this year from that. So he'll be impactful that way. He's not the most elusive, in my opinion. He can he's good at finding open space, but I don't think he's the best after contact. But I still think he's 100% someone that in most instances would go on day 2.
With the new kick return rules, I could definitely see a team taking him.
Yeah.
Well, his running ability, he's explosive enough that
he finds space.
Yeah, for sure. But definitely the return ability. That's invaluable, especially with the new rules where you really need guys who can gain ground quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the way that when we do group mocks like this all the time, running backs never get taken. Everybody, when we do group mocks, everybody just will wait around to take a running back. I think the NFL sees it differently than mock drafters do.
I think I've taken Emmett Johnson, both of them, for the Saints. So I'm keeping him off the board.
Say that again.
Fighting the good fight.
I think Emmett Johnson, he's going to be rising. Excited to see him play.
Cool. Well, hey, Jake Robertson, it's great to see you stop by as well. So I want to say again, thank you, Ian, Drew, and then Owen checked out a couple of minutes early, but I want to say thank you. You guys gave 2.5 hours of your Friday evening to make this event happen. So if you're watching, give Drew and Ian a follow, please. We can't do this without you guys doing what you do. And we do this every Friday. It'll be different podcasters on the microphones, but we'll do this every Friday. So my hat's off to both of you. We just put a 3-round mock out, right? And we built it in 2.5 hours. So thank you very much, both of you. So Ian, why don't you tell everybody if they weren't here at the beginning so that they know kind of who you are and the other content that you make and the other simulator that you represent and everything else.
Yeah, so if you don't know me, Ian Cummings at IC_draft on X, formerly Twitter. I also have a mock draft simulator that I work on. It's over at PFSN. Yeah, it's a thing. I also have a draft board, composite board that I'm working on adding more and more grades to, updating more and more grades for in the lead up to the All-Star cycle. So that's been a lot of fun. And then, yeah, just overseeing the great team of draft contractors that we got there too. I want to shout those guys out because they've been putting in a ton of great work in the lead up to the All-Star cycle. Always been enthusiastic and passionate. And yeah, it's just kind of, it's that time of year and we're enjoying it, enjoying every second and trying to see how this class is going to shake out. But as always, enjoy joining you, Jim, and the team here for these podcasts and mocks. It's a test of endurance, but it's always a fun time.
Drew.
Yeah, so name's Drew Collings. You can follow me on X at Drew M. Collings. I'll post scouting reports of various articles I write. I write at Roundtable Sports covering the NFL draft for a couple of teams: Saints, Chargers, Texans, Vikings, 49ers. And I write for a Saints site called Who Dat Dish as well. Then you can find me on this podcast on Saturdays and Mondays, or just a random time as well. Sometimes just fill in. And I have my own Saints podcast once a week called The Dome Discussions. You can find me on.
Yeah. And then I want to reiterate what Drew just said. So the podcasts on this channel are at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday. Mock drafts every Friday at 7. Show on Saturday morning. There are several shows on Sunday morning, and this Sunday we debut Jack Brentnall and Devin Jackson podcasting every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. So if you're not familiar with Jack, he represents the largest UK-based NFL website. So I believe it's called The Touchdown. And then Devin Jackson, I just know Devin from the draft. And I think he writes for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Devin was one of the first people to podcast at Draft Professor. So when I started the podcast, he was among the initial people that I asked. So he is coming back for this draft cycle, and his show with Jack will be on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. And specifically this week, they are talking about linebackers. So for Drew, Ian, Owen, myself, the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your Friday night, and we will see you on a podcast tomorrow morning. Thanks, everybody.